And if you want to go ahead, Sarah, and you can, well, let's just wait a second and make sure here. I was going to say you could share your screen, but. Looks like we're live. We check our audio.
I can hear you okay.
Thank you, Chan. All right.
You ready?
We are ready. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us back this afternoon on our JCPS Digital Learning channel. My name is Kathleen Receiver, and I'm one of the digital innovation leaders here in JCPS. And this afternoon, we are joined with Pam and Sarah from the Library Media Services. How are we doing, ladies?
Good. We're so happy to be here. I'm Sarah O'Hare, the web content librarian for the district.
And I'm Pam Coomer, instructional resource librarian.
And we have Jessica Garvin in the chat for us today, along with some of our colleagues. So if you have questions during the session, please drop your questions there, and we'll be happy to try and get them answered for you. We're going to show you a variety of resources today that we have in JCPS at our fingertips, and they're all through your library Libguide. And so the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to access your library Libguide if you don't already know how to do so. So Jessica's going to drop the link to this landing page that I'm going to show you as I present. And see, there we go. And I need to turn on my closed captioning, which, yeah, I'm getting, oops.
Yep, you'll do that if you're in the presentation. If you're not in the presentation, then we won't have the closed captioning, so you're fine.
Okay, perfect. And so from there, the link that Jessica dropped in the chat will take you to this page. And this is just a landing page, and it has every school library Libguides link on it. And it's broken down by high school on the first tab, middle school, and then elementary school. So find your school level, and then scroll down until you find your school and click on the link, and that'll open up your library Libguide. Now, most of the resources that we're going to show you today have usernames and passwords, and we can't share those publicly on over YouTube. And so your school librarian has very likely already sent you these usernames and passwords. And if they haven't, or it's gotten lost, please don't hesitate to reach out to your librarian and ask for them again. They'll be happy to send them to you again and are ready to support you in using these resources. And so now I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over to Pam, who's going to show us some of the resources that are on your guide.
Hi, I'm here on a tour of the database, and I'm unsure. Kathleen, can you tell me how to share my screen? It's not as I practiced it.
Yeah, so it'll probably be up in the top in one of your tabs. Do you see the little red circle from the Google Hangout?
And then there are 3 dots in the upper right corner.
Yep.
And you click on the 3 dots, and the top one said share screen.
Unfortunately, I'm not getting the 3 dots.
Are you looking at the Google Hangout tab right now? Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
Okay, so you click on that screen and hover on the top right corner. You don't see the person and the settings?
I do not. There we go. Sorry, guys.
Yay!
Yay. Sorry, that was not as I had practiced it. Okay, so I am going to take you on a tour of what the databases that are available for you from your school library's Libguide.
And Pam, before you get started, can you click on hide for me so we can see your entire presentation? There you go. And then let's turn on those closed captions. There's a little arrow up. If you hover up, yep, that little arrow, click on the arrow and then click on allow. The allow, yeah, there you go. And then if you go back to that arrow, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And then we want to make it at the top. It's easier to see. And we want that text size to be large. Whoops. I'll try it one more time. Yeah, you have to click on the arrow for the settings. And then there you go. And then one more time. Again, it's kind of silly. But once this is set, you'll be good. And then at the top. All right. So now click on the close on the little CC. And you're good to go. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for those technical glitches. So I want to show you how to access the databases or remind you how to access them through your school library Libguide. You're going to locate the Student Resources tab seen here labeled 1. It could also say Research. The schools vary with how they label their tabs. And then you're going to click on the Gale icon labeled here as 2. You can then select the specific database you wish to use. These are the databases available for our elementary students. So you have Elementary, National Geographic Kids, Science, U.S. History, and World History. And these are the databases available for middle and high. Biography, Global Issues, High School, Middle School, Opposing Viewpoints, Science, U.S. History, and World History. Today we're going to tour the For Educators database. Here. Now, when you get to the For Educators database, you will need to log in. I suggest that you log in using Google to take full advantage of the integration with Google Classroom. The workflow for this database contains curriculum standards, subject search, and then the general advanced search. We're going to start at Find Your Curriculum and search the curriculum standards. I'm going to select Social Studies, Grade 3. It will populate those standards, and you can click on any of the C resources to get to the resources that are aligned with that standard. I'm going to choose the first one. When the page opens, all of the content types here are aligned to that curriculum standard that I searched. I can filter my results using these labels. But for today's purposes, I want to show you the lesson plans. So I'm going to click on Lesson Plan. And you can go through and see the titles of the lesson plans and some information about them. I like this lesson plan, Respecting Cultures. So I'm going to open that. And I'm going to scroll through and show you some of the features. You get a lesson overview, objectives, and skills. All of the resources that you need for this lesson plan are linked in the plan. So, for example, this says get the Respecting Cultures article, and this article is in the Gale in Context Elementary database. I'm going to click on that article. And this is what your students would see. This is the article that your students would see. First of all, notice that they can translate into any language and they can listen. They can listen in English or they can listen in the language they selected. You're also provided annotation tools, so you can annotate this text for them. You can give them an introductory note or instructions. This aids in the deeper learning for your students. As we scroll through the article, notice you have a picture and then the text of your article, and then there's a highlighted box with words to know. At the end of the article and at the end of every resource that you find in all of the Gale databases, you will find the source citation. You can toggle between MLA, APA, and Chicago, and you can export to all of these tools, including Google Drive. Now we'll go back up. I want to show you one thing. For this article, here is the content level. It is a level 1, which is kindergarten through 3rd grade. But notice in the drop-down box, I could select 600. And when I do select 600, then it switches to a level 2, which is 4th and 5th grade. Let's scroll down and see what happened to our article. Now we notice we have a different picture and we have a different highlighted box with main ideas. The article is the same, but the text has been leveled to a 4th and 5th grade lifestyle. There are several methods of saving the article. Remember, it is linked in the lesson plan, but you have to make it available to your students. First, I could click on Send To and send it to Google Classroom or Google Drive. I can also click on Add to Folder. By adding to a folder, you can curate more resources and then send the entire folder of resources to your students. I'm going to select K-3 Social Studies as my folder. Notice that once you do add a resource to a folder, then you get this blue box with the name of the folder underneath the title. That will remind you of where you have placed resources in this database. Now let's go back to the lesson plan. There are a few other helpful features that I want to point out. I'm going to scroll to the bottom and show you that you are provided an assessment tool, formative and a summative, differentiation, and here's a great little feature that I just found. Adaptations for virtual teaching and learning. This provides ideas for adapting this specific lesson to a virtual classroom. How timely is that for all of us? Now I'm going to go back to the top and I want to show you the workflow for subjects briefly. I'm going to click on subjects. They're broken down by grade level and content. So, for an example, let's look at high school science chemistry. Note all the topics that populate once we pull up that subject. I'm going to look at matter and elements. Again, the page opens and shows all of the content types aligned to the specific subject that we selected. Finally, I want to go over and show you my class resources. This is where your folders are saved. So I'm going to show you this chemistry folder. And I want to point out that it shows you all of the document types that I have saved in this folder, everything that I have curated. I can tag those resources. I can move them if that's necessary. And then what I can do with this folder is send it to my students, either through Classroom or to myself to Google Drive, or I could get a persistent link. I can also share the folder by clicking on Give Access. This way your PLC could share resources. Pay attention though to how you share your resources. When you share a copy, everyone gets their own copy to work from. If you click Work Together, the recipients all work on this one folder. So they're editing this folder as a group. So that is Gale for Educators. I want you to know that all Gale databases have the same features. Students can translate, listen, change the font, highlight and take notes, copy the source citation, and save to Google Drive. There is a help link at the bottom of each page as well to get information. And I just think Gale is a really great tool, and I hope that you will think about sharing it with your students. Now I want to move on to KYVL, and I will remind you again how to access it through your school's library Libguide. You are looking for the Student Resources or Research tab, labeled 1 here, and then you would click on the KYVL icon labeled 2 in this picture. When you open up KYVL, you will notice that you have a 4 K-12 students. You can open that, and everything is arranged by grade level. You are always provided encyclopedias and databases for each grade level. I would like to show you the Explora database for elementary because it's just really pretty. Not a fan of the snake that's right here right now, but that's okay because it's a scrolling gallery, so I can make it go away pretty quickly. Students can look at the picture to determine which topic they want to choose. So they can click on animals, and then it opens up even more pictures for them to do a deeper dive into specific animals. Now I'll go back and I want to show you what's available for middle school. For middle school, you have a few more Britannica products, plus that middle school Explora. And then we'll go look at high school. High school, you get Academic Search Complete and ProQuest, Britannica, and the Explorer for high schools. I want to open up Britannica School and show you some of the cool features in that website, or that database, excuse me. So look at this. I mean, this is not your mother's encyclopedia, I promise you. The content is dynamic and engaging, and your students will enjoy searching around in this database. I'm going to do a quick search on periodic table. I don't know why I was stuck on chemistry today. And show you when the results from this database pull up, this is what it looks like. So you will see that you have level tabs here. A level 3 is high school, which is where we started because we're in Britannica School High. But let's say you have a student who needs content at a lower level, still with the keyword of periodic table of elements, but at a lower level. You can click, or they can click level 2 and get to middle school content level, or a level 1, which is elementary. The next thing to note is how the results of the search are provided. So the specific content types are listed here on this left-hand side. You can click directly on what you wish to view. I'm going to look for a video. And I like this one. It just shows how the periodic table is organized. I would preview this video before assigning it to my students. And if it was proper for me to do that, then I would click Google Classroom and put that in my Google Classroom along with the other resources that I have curated for that folder. Now, the other section I want to show you is educators. The educators page does require a sign into Britannica, but it's quick and easy and it's free. After you sign into Britannica, you then have access to lesson plans, and they have created lesson plans. They also have a platform which allows you to customize their lesson plans or create your own while curating the content aligned to your content, to your lesson. It's also integrated with Google Classroom for ease of use and sharing with students and with your colleagues. Ooh, well, that was a database marathon for sure. Remember, if you have questions, contact your school librarian. They're there to support you, to help you use the resources, and to provide you with the passwords. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah.
Unmute yourself, Sarah, please.
Thank you. I'm excited to hear about all of the ways that teachers and librarians are using Gale with their students. And now I'm going to show you some online ebook resources. And all of the ebooks that I'm going to show you today are always available, and multiple students can access these resources at the same time. So you don't have to worry about them being checked out or unavailable when your students go to use them. I'm going to start sharing my screen again. And the first one we're going to look at is on an elementary page. Now, every school has an NTI online books and resources page. Elementary school have one set of resources, and then middle and high school have another set of resources on their NTI online books and resources page. And I'm starting here on the elementary page, and we're going to take a look at Tumblebook Library, which is available through KYVL, the same resource that Pam just showed us. We have direct links to these resources to make them reduce the number of clicks for your students. So you'll see that Tumblebooks has a scrolling banner across the top with books that are highlighted each day. And then we have a scrolling bar that highlights new books and books on different topics to draw attention. You'll see that there's a section on graphic novels, and I can scroll and see Geronimo Stilton and Lego Ninjago, books that your students may be interested in reading. Now, I'm going to continue scrolling down, and one of the topics happens to be on self-esteem. And I'm going to take a look at Bink and Golly, which is part of a series by a really popular author, Kate DiCamillo. And so when I click on the book, the picture books in Tumblebook Cloud, you'll notice that it says play video. So this book will be read aloud to your students with some narration and some animated features to make the story more engaging. And so we'll see a summary, and then you'll see book details over here on the right. And so all of these books are always available. And there's a partner product for the middle and high schools that I'm going to go ahead and switch over to show you now. And it has chapter books in it. And the chapter books that appear here are the same, have the same features as the chapter books that you'll see in Tumblebook Library for the elementary students. And so you'll see the scrolling bars, just like we did. And I'm going to go ahead and click on fiction, because since Teen Book Cloud is for middle and high schools, they do have some differentiation. So we'll see here that it starts with teen fiction, and then teen high-low fiction, meaning high interest, low reading level for struggling readers. Classics, which may be good for your AP English students. And then middle school fiction, and then it breaks it down to middle school high-low fiction also. There's also a search feature here, and since I showed you a Kate DiCamillo book, picture book, I'm going to take a look here and search by author. And I'm going to click on her name, and you'll see that also available through Teen Book Cloud and Tumblebooks. These same titles are available in Tumblebooks for Kate DiCamillo. You'll see that Flora and Ulysses, Magician's Elephant, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, and The Tale of Despero are all available. So if you are looking for a chapter book to assign to all of your students, this may be a place that you can come to show them. Now I'm going to go ahead and click to show you what a chapter book looks like. And this looks the same in Tumblebook Library because they're partner products. And I can scroll through the pages by clicking the arrows. Students can click bookmark when they're finished reading for the day. They also have some text options and a place to take notes. Now, if you are wanting to assign a specific title in either one of these products, you can take the browser and paste it into your Google Classroom so that all of your students have access to this. They will need the username and password to access it that way. All right, and so I'm going to close out some of these. And the next product that I'm going to show you is also given to us through KYVL, and it's the Ebsco eBooks K through 8 collection. All right, and you'll notice that the interface looks a little bit differently on this one. And I'm going to scroll down, and this one only has a couple of scrolling bars with the covers showing. I'm going to go ahead and click here on children's and young adult fiction. And through here, you'll see a list of books, and they do show the covers. One series that our early readers may be interested in that's accessible through here is Carlos and Carmen. featuring two Latinx twins. And you'll see there are several books available through those. Another one is for our middle grade readers is Big Mate. Big Mate is popular in libraries. And there are several Big Mate titles for students to choose from that are available through this collection. And then one for middle and high school is Every Shiny Thing. And in this book has dual authors. And I'm going to go ahead and click. And features one character in foster care and another one on the autism spectrum. And it's a story about friendship and loyalty and resilience, which is always something that our students can relate to. And so one thing within the Ebsco K through 8 collection, you do have to teach students to click here where it says EPUB, or sometimes it'll be a PDF, in order for them to access the content. And so when it opens, students will still be able to scroll through the pages. And in this database, if you want to assign a particular book to your students, you'll notice up here that it has a Google Classroom button. And so then when I choose, when I click on that, it just opens to share to classroom and I can choose my class and assign it there. All right, moving quickly along. The next resource is Unite for Literacy. And on this, you'll see early readers for students. And it also has timely choices like who wears masks. When I open, it's very user-friendly and students can just click through and they see the book pages just as if they had it in front of them. You can have it narrated and change the language, and you have a share this book option. And I'm going to go ahead and get out of this resource. And the last one that I want to show you is Sora. And we have a collection available to us, the Jefferson County Remote Reading Collection. And I also want to point out that we have a box for the public library with instructions on finding out what your library card number is, because there's a cool feature in Sora that I'm looking at the time and noticing that we have a really short amount. We can access Sora through Clever, which I think is really cool. And when I open Clever, I've already got a book checked out, and it automatically comes to the book that I've got out on loan. I can also have a shelf and create lists of books. And so I already have some titles that students would be interested in reading about. One being the Disturbed Girls Dictionary, which was a YALSA Best Fiction for Young Adult selection. I can also come back and click down the trail and come to Explore. And this is the home page for the Jefferson County Remote Reading. And you'll see it has scrolling bars also to help students search. But the reason I showed you the LFPL box was because with Sora, you can also link your account to your Louisville Free Public Library library card. And so this is a place where you can search both our Jefferson County Remote Reading Collection and from the Louisville Free Public Library in one easy spot. So I know we just went through a ton of resources in a very short amount of time. And so I just want and encourage you to reach out to your school librarian to help you explore these resources more. And in the schedule, we have a slide deck that has tutorials for each of the products that we just showed you so that you can go in and explore them more. And so, Pam, I think you had just a couple things. Oh, unmute.
Yes, you covered that. I was just going to remind them that the slide deck that's linked on the NTI, the slide deck that is linked on the on our presentation has Screencastify videos and a link to the landing page. And to reach out to your school librarian if you have any questions.
Thank you both so much. We appreciate you joining us today. And remember, if you are viewing right now and it was a lot of information, we will have all of these sessions today broken up and on our channel in the teacher playlist. So you can go back with the power of pause and play and pause to refresh your memory. So thanks again.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Okay, so we have up next Ryan New or Suzanne Kramer and Ryan New, and they're going to talk to us about, let's see, interdisciplinary choice boards.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello. How are you all?
We're great.
Great.
Yeah.
Who's going to be sharing their screen today?
Suzanne, I can try to do that.
Well, I'm sitting in my good internet spot, so maybe do you want me to do it?
Yeah, because I'm afraid that it'll drop out. So yeah.
Okay, I'll give it a try. So our presentation is linked in the live training schedule. I think Kathleen put it there. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my video and I'll screen share our presentation here.
Okay. And yes, if you do not see it linked, you will need to refresh your page. Since the virtual schedule is in presentation mode, when we make updates, you might have to refresh. So I did put it there. Just make sure you hit refresh. All right. Yep. And if you'll click on that hide button for me, please. You got it.
Closed captioning, right?
Yep. And if you could, right next to that little triangle, it's really better when the closed captioning is at the top. So if you could,
Sorry.
You're fine. There you go. You got it. All right. Can't wait to learn from you both.
All right. We're going to go back to the beginning here. There we go. Ryan, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having us. Today, Suzanne and I are going to be looking at a question that we actually looked at in the spring, but we've now updated of looking at how we could, specifically for K-5, looking at how to use the tool that we talked last week about deconstructing standards and unit planning when it comes to choice boards. So our question, how can I use choice boards to figure out, how can we use questions to build choice boards? So before we talked about with choice boards, not part of the core curriculum, right? These are ways of essentially providing a resource or, Suzanne, how else would we say this? Not just a resource, but
It could be a resource as a piece of a holistic, robust curriculum. It's a way to conceptualize tasks and their relationships to one another, in the ways in which we can find common strands that bring learning together in unit design, in a way that takes into consideration our end user, which is students, and seeing the connections between content and processes and skills and so forth. And so, of course, we're still going to be doing our guided reading, and we're still going to be doing writing instruction and deep dives into corroboration with sources. And we're still going to be teaching our math curriculum. But when we're planning, choice boards are a really good way for us to conceptualize the connections between tasks. And then today we're going to talk a little bit about how they can be a driver for connecting standards, particularly for elementary school.
Well said. I'm glad I'm partnered with you. So before we looked at the interdisciplinary choice boards, these can also be disciplinary choice boards as well. And I know that one middle school has already reached out and said, hey, they want us to have this as an option too. And it actually works just the same, because in social studies, this is the same way that we're looking at it. So we've got in the center the compelling question, the idea then that everything is centered around a larger question. Think of the compelling question as a gigantic umbrella through which all the other standards, all the other supporting questions that are aligned to those standards can fit. So it's the compelling questions that become essentially the glue that can hold all these different, contents together when oftentimes they are siloed. So as you can sort of see here, there's supporting questions with each of the standards, right? And we can pick and choose as we'd like to, again, to build this as a great resource. So in order to figure out why we want to use compelling questions, part of compelling questions is about manufacturing curiosity gaps with students. That it's not just about where the student is, but where you want the student to go. The compelling question then services two foundational elements. The first is that it makes space for the learner. It also makes space for our contents, for the standards that we have to teach. For the learner, a compelling question says, here's where I am as a learner, and this question is going to change me in some way because it's meaningful to me in some way. It allows me to see where I might go. That is something that's worthy of spending a lot of time talking about. So as you're building units around compelling questions, it's important to get that question as quote unquote right as possible from the very beginning, because it will be framing and focusing that learning. Now we want to, right, for our young learner, this is my daughter here, who's about to be a fifth grader at Bowen. She is curious about the world. And so part of what we're trying to do with the compelling question is to make space for her own questions, for her own understanding of the world. Now we might couch it in a way that's more universal. Oftentimes compelling questions are meaningful across multiple years and multiple lifetimes. So the same kind of questions that we're asking today were probably asked 100 years ago, and will probably be asked 100 years from now. And that these compelling questions become essentially windows and mirrors, right? It allows us to sort of see where we might go, but compelling questions also reflect on where we are. On the other side of this, the second element are the standards. And that, as I mentioned prior to, questions have an ability to be an umbrella for these different disciplines, as each of them are sort of banging into each other, right, trying to make sense of something. Oftentimes, we do not think in terms of silos. That compelling questions are questions that we have, and that it is the other supporting questions, it's the other contents, then, that provide us different ways and understanding of that larger question. So then compelling questions create these gaps that challenge students' assumptions and spark the need and desire to make sense of the world as it relates to them. Disciplines are lenses that complicate the world. The goal of education is not to simplify the complex, but to make the complex accessible. So compelling questions help us do this. So we sort of have this compelling question generator here. We're able to take these different contents, and out pops both intradisciplinary, right? If you're looking at it, say you're a seventh grade social studies teacher, or interdisciplinary, say that you're either an academies or maybe a K-5 teacher. So very specific definitions. A compelling question is intellectually rigorous. They're not ornamental, right? They're not meant to just sort of be like, oh, let's appreciate this beautiful question. They're going to stimulate students' minds. They're going to stimulate our own minds, right? A really great compelling question is oftentimes when you hear it, you say, I hadn't really thought of that before. Compelling questions are student-friendly, and they're motivating, right? I want to try to answer them. Most great compelling questions, you can't help but not to think about them. And then ultimately, as we're going to talk about here, they're going to be answered by summative performance tasks, right? So they're not ornamental. They're actually bookending the lesson, right? Or the unit, rather, right? So you're going to begin with a compelling question. You're going to end with a summative performance task. What is it? What type of product are students going to be wrestling with that helps answer that question, having first been through a series of supporting questions, right? So supporting questions, unlike compelling, are much more specific to the standards or to the discipline. Supporting questions rest in the known, right? It's things that we don't necessarily have to debate about. Compelling questions are not that way. Compelling questions, unfortunately, are divergent in a thinking. You can go multiple directions with them. There's no real right or wrong answer. It's just the way that we might approach it with the evidence having been gathered from different disciplines. And then ultimately supporting questions, right, are going to be answered by formative performance tasks. So just as a compelling question is going to be answered by a summative performance task, a supporting question will be answered by a formative performance task, which is why they end up framing lessons. So we can sort of pick our metaphor here, right? What is a stool without the top, right? What is a stool without the legs? You got to have them together, right? And this is really, to be honest with you, one of the major reasons why I've moved way away from essential questions is that they were never sort of scaffoldable in a way. Essential questions are sort of there, but they're more ornamental, and they're never actually functioning inside of most classrooms. And so another metaphor here, right? That if the compelling question is the roof, supporting questions are the walls, right? You can't have one without the other. I guess you could, but it wouldn't be a very, very nice house. All right, next slide. So how do I make quality compelling questions? So to create a quality compelling question, notice here I don't say the word correct compelling question or right compelling question, because ultimately compelling questions have to be fluid enough to be, manipulated or even changed based upon your students, right? So sometimes that's going to happen. It's happened to me as a teacher, and that's okay. But sometimes teachers get in their minds where they're like, I've got to have the exact right compelling question. That's not the case. You've got to have a very good quality question that does these things, and then you go from there. You sort of see what you get from your students, and then having conversations with your students, how you might change that to something more that's more meaningful to them. So you can create a compelling question that meets the criteria of a great question. We've already done that, right? Is it intellectually rigorous? Is it student friendly? Is it motivating to try to answer? Then you can stress test it with possible responses in different content areas. What I mean by this is if we've got a compelling question, like how does disease change the world? Then what does that look like in science, right? What does that look like in business? What does that look like in ELA or in social studies? Those different lenses, those different disciplines provide us an opportunity to attack that question with very different perspectives. And that's what makes compelling questions quite unique. Go back one, please.
Sorry.
So when you're looking at then number 3, create support a summative performance task that align to the compelling question. This is where you're creating your ultimate product. What do you want students to be able to do after they've investigated all these different supporting questions? Disciplines, from art, from music, from history, and so on. And then ultimately, you're going to then align tasks to those supporting questions as well. So by the very end of this, you have tasks that are aligned to supporting questions, and you have the summative performance task, right? The ultimate product that you want them to do aligned with the compelling question. So that no question exists without a task, and that tasks without questions are meaningless, okay? So as an example here, we showed this last year, right? There's an elementary example. How can disease change the world? And we wanted to make sure that students even answered specific ones. So we put a little hashtag next to it. That's why that hashtag is there. Make sure that those are the ones that, yes, you have to sort of answer. It's a choice board, not a completely choice board, right? And then students get to sort of choose the different ways in which they might approach the other questions. But you can sort of see then, in the middle you get the larger compelling question, and on the outside of it you have a series of supporting questions. Next slide. So here's a middle school example. Again, you guys can have access to these slides to look at them a little bit more in depth. And then the high school example, right? All right.
So last NTI 1.0, we talked about the relationships between compelling questions, the supporting questions in each discipline, how those connect to lessons and formative tasks, and then how we build out those success criteria and feedback all along the way. And this is the same thing in elementary. We can see how our supporting questions in ELA, social studies, and the arts might come together for interdisciplinary planning. Or today, we're going to talk a little bit about how we might combine these arrows and see the connections in concepts and skills and content between our disciplines. And so that's what we've really worked on since the spring, is thinking about how we can use our new standards deconstruction document, our reimagined process, to get at more efficient planning using these interdisciplinary choice boards as the tasks from which we are planning backwards. And so this was kind of our question as we began our work today on this presentation. So how can we use these choice boards, starting with that quality compelling question, ensuring that the supporting questions scaffold to the summative, and that we are bringing in standards, and how can we use this as a driver for effective planning, particularly in elementary school? And so here on the left, we have some things that are really important for us to remember. And that is that here in NTI 2.0, we are prioritizing a more robust and consistent design, right? So a holistic curriculum delivery, like we talked about in the beginning. And that choice boards are a resource that provide us a useful way of thinking about the connections between tasks and questions in unit planning. And that, excuse me, when we are thinking about planning with standards in elementary school, we can't be thinking about a standards deconstruction document for every discipline. That's overwhelming. That won't be good for kids in terms of those experiences that create connections between their learning, right? That transfer that we're seeking. And so we want to think about planning in silos versus looking for those cross-cutting threads. Like, what is the narrative of a unit? What are the concepts that exist together in science, in ELA, in social studies? What are those skills of inquiry and citing evidence and making claims that cut across all disciplines? And then what are those enduring understandings? And so we just wanted to remind you about our backward planning framework here, right? That we are beginning with the desired results, those summative and formative tasks that are driven by questions. This is the choice board, right? Well, acceptable evidence connects to standards and what the success criteria will be. And we can get at step number 2 by using our standards deconstruction document. And then that gives us a jumping off point for planning our daily lessons, our asynchronous and synchronous interactions with students, and the activities and the learning that they're going to be doing. And so I'm going to go ahead, and this link is available for you all in this presentation. And so one thing to note is that this is just a proof of concept. This is not designed to be for any particular grading period or something that you can take into your classroom untouched right now. This is a proof of concept to help us think about how to use these tools and do this thinking. And so that elementary school interdisciplinary choice board that we just showed you at the beginning is what we used for backward design. So we created that choice board. The compelling question is, how can disease change the world? And then we took the tasks from science, math, social studies, and ELA, and we back mapped the standards from the choice board. And so at the top, you'll see the standards in each discipline back mapped from the tasks. And you'll see the tasks here. So here's the summative assessment from the middle of the choice board. Here is each box on the choice board, which are those formative assessments. And then we've asked for teachers to consider how the backpack of success skills provide cross-cutting teachable moments, right? Around collaboration, communication, design thinking, so on and so forth. We've brought over the idea of single point rubrics from our grading guidance from NTI 2.0. And so linked in here is why single point rubrics can be effective and how we can use them in our planning and design for dollops of actionable feedback. And so here we even gave an example for one of the math tasks on the choice board. This is a single point rubric for a math task. You'll see the criteria in the middle. Descriptive feedback goes here and here. And then here, it's in this deconstruction of the standards in each discipline, content, skill, concept, and prior knowledge, that we can begin to see those cross-cutting connections in the ways in which, how do these disciplines connect? How do the skills and processes and content come together? And I've even put a note here. And so in the comment, you'll see that making claims, supporting those claims with evidence, asking and answering logical questions, choosing relevant evidence and sources, those skills cut across all of our content areas here. And so then once we have that choice board, we have back mapped to the core standards here. Now we can see a narrative thread of this unit. These things are connected by the compelling question, and to some extent the supporting questions and the content, right? Because it's dealing with our students' very relevant experience with this pandemic and health in their communities, right? So the content is cross-cutting. And then within these disciplinary standards, we see those cross-cutting skills and concepts that I brought up here in this comment. And so we just wanted to show you how we might leverage the choice boards. We have a quality compelling question, quality summative tasks, how we can use those to then pull standards together to see how they connect, to create a more coherent learning experience for students so that they aren't experiencing learning in silos and we're not having to plan learning in silos. And we are getting at all four of our core areas here. Ryan, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, just to redouble that, oftentimes one of the biggest, well, actually what a lot of teachers are now considering, I think, as are we, is how much time are we going to have with our students? And so my guess is probably about half as much time as we'd like. And so that makes it even more important to try to figure out how to plan in an interdisciplinary way, specifically for K-5. Because otherwise what'll happen is that reading and writing might be taught without any kind of context around social studies, or that math might be taught without any kind of context around science, right? Or that, we might not even have an opportunity for our related arts friends to be able to have a say in some of that. So I do think that this is a fantastic way of seeing those commonalities, as you've so well done, to sort of show how you can be doing, one thing, but it's actually bringing together three different items.
Yeah, and I think it's really, really important from the literacy perspective. What you just said, we can't reiterate it enough, that why do we learn to read? Why do we learn to write? Well, we do so with the purpose of learning and reading in the content area and delivering and writing, creating compositions that are substantive about the world. And so I think a really important piece of this is you're not seeing the literacy instruction in isolation from the content instruction, and that we're building knowledge. That's really, really important. Knowledge building is an important piece of a quality curriculum design. And if we're planning in this way, where we build in inquiry and we have that compelling question, then we're building those skills for a purpose. And it has that ingrained knowledge building piece that isn't this skills in isolation kind of learning. And I think that's so important, particularly in elementary school literacy, because especially when we get to secondary, we read and write for the purpose of delivering information about content, right? About exploring our world and so forth. And so we need to think about that purpose also in elementary school.
Yeah, and Suzanne and I are more than willing to help in any way that we can during this time. So please reach out, ryan.new, suzanne.kramer, and we'll be more than happy to help in this way.
Yes, thank you so much. Here's our contact information. We're so grateful that you all joined us today, and we hope that these tools used together can lead to that really robust instruction and great learning experiences for kids in NTI 2.0.
All right. Thank you both so much for being here today and for this wonderful information. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
Yep, thank you very much.
All right, so we have a few more minutes before our next presentation. If you're just joining us, my name is Kathleen Receiver, and I'm one of the JCPS Digital Innovation Leaders here in our district. Thank you for being here today. You can find our schedule. I'm linking it in the chat, so you can check out our schedule to see what we have going on for the rest of the week, as well as for this afternoon. So here's a look at the schedule we have coming up here in a few minutes. Dr. Jan Richardson is going to be here with us, and I'm so excited to hear from her, as well as Andrea Higdon and Alan Young and Justin Elliott this afternoon. So make sure to refresh your virtual schedule if you do not see a link for the last two presentations. We've updated those, so you may just need to give it a little bit of a refresh. And that should show up there for you. Also, if you are just joining us and you are on Twitter, you want to make sure that you are following the JCPS Digital Innovation Twitter handle and staying current with everything that's new with digital innovation in JCPS. And you can see we've tweeted out about Dr. Jan Richardson joining us here in just a few moments. We're really excited about her being on our show today. And a bunch of different people, Principal Folk has tweeted out to our hashtag. So thank you for doing that. There's a bunch of great resources on our Twitter handle. Also, if you are on our JCPS Digital Learning channel right now, which you are if you're watching, make sure you subscribe to our channel. And that way you will be updated when we have different shows that come on. You will get updates from YouTube letting you know the show and what time and what it is. All right, I have a few people from, I see Jesse's here with us. And I think Deanna and Andrea are here with us as well as Dr. Richardson. Do you want to go ahead, Dr. Richardson, Jan, and get your slides up?
Yes, please. Okay, let's see. All right, so I do not want to share my whole thing. Okay.
Yep.
This is what I want to share. And you are going to help me with something.
Yes, so if you, let's see, right now it looks like you're sharing, I have a little bit of your screen there.
Oh, really?
Now it's getting bigger. I don't know what you did, but it widened up a little bit. Maybe when you go in present mode, it'll be larger. So from the, pulled up mine. From the PowerPoint that you are in right now, you're going to go to, up in the very top under your tabs, and where it says, I believe it's under slideshow, and it might still be checked from last time. Let's see, animations. Right next to animations, do you see the little arrow where you can go over for slideshow?
Yeah.
Up at the top?
Yes.
And then you'll want to make sure that... I'm sorry?
Is that what we're doing, spoken language?
Always use subtitles.
Subtitles, okay. I do want to check the video, please. I have so many videos. I want to make sure that they're playing correctly.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm trying, for some reason, it's not what I want.
Keep warm early climbers for layers of wool.
Yes, we
Can you hear that?
We sure can.
And
Okay.
bulky boots.
All right. So then I guess I'm not really sure exactly what I'm doing here.
You're doing great.
So, okay.
You got it. So you'll
All right.
just
So
go
then do I
back.
have to click on slideshow? Is that what I'm doing right now?
Yes. So if you go to slideshow and then on the far right, it'll say subtitles, and you'll put the checkbox inside there.
I already did that.
Okay, great. Then you're good. Then you can go ahead and present your screen, and I'm going to introduce you if that's okay.
Is my screen being presented right now?
It sure is. We can see it.
Okay.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. Today, as we listen to Dr. Jan Richardson's presentation on remote guided reading, you may have some questions. We ask that you pose those questions in the chat, and our district literacy coaches will then direct those questions to Andrea and Deanna, who will ask as many of those questions as possible within the final 15 minutes of Dr. Jan Richardson's presentation today. So all district-specific questions should be routed to the district literacy support team. But if you have questions for Jan today, then make sure you put those in there, and our literacy coaches will gather them. And in the last 15 minutes, she will have time to answer questions. It is my distinct privilege and honor to introduce to you Dr. Jan Richardson. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here. All right, so we're going to take it away. So I want to thank you again for taking time out of your very busy and stressful schedule to join me today. And my goal today is to help you feel less stressed, because I know you are all very passionate about helping your children. And I have taught over 150 remote guided reading lessons since the schools closed in April. So I think I might even be the queen of remote guided reading. And I'm going to share with you solutions and tips and video clips of what remote guided reading can look like. So I just want to review the resources that are available to you. Of course, all of the resources are based upon the Yellow Book, which you all have, the Next Step Forward in Guided Reading. Many of you also have the Guided Reading Teacher's Companion. Now, this is kind of like a cheat sheet. If you need a little help with your prompts, teaching points, discussion starters, and there's everything you need from pre-A to Fluent. You may also have, I believe at your building, are some videos of complete lessons, because what I'm going to share with you today are just clips of lessons. And if you want to see, well, what does a pre-A lesson or a Fluent lesson look like from start to finish, that's your resource. Of course, the Next Step Guided Reading Assessment is all online. So if you have this resource in your building, you are able to assess your students online digitally. My book that came out last year, The Next Step Forward in Word Study and Phonics, is your go-to book for word study. It has ready-to-teach lessons if you need to save some time. All of the lessons are arranged by text level, and you can find a word study lesson that would fit the needs of your kids. Of course, you all have access to the literacy footprints, which includes guided reading lessons that I have written, and you also have access to that as a digital reader. The Next Step Forward in Reading Intervention and the RISE Kit are coming out just now, and they are really used for children who are struggling and how can we catch them up. And my newest book that I just finished writing with two very highly respected reading recovery people, Dr. Cece Bates and Marianne McBride, The Next Step Forward in Running Records, is coming out in January. So yes, I have been quite busy. Just want to start by sharing a Brookings report that came out pretty recently on the impact of COVID-19 on student achievement and what it may mean for educators. And I'm just going to share just a couple pieces from this. This is a slide that shows the projections of where kids will be. This is where they would have been in third grade at the beginning of last year. This is where they were at school closure. The solid line is where they would have expected to be if schools had stayed in session, and then accounting for summer slide. The dotted line shows what the projections are for students because they were not in school. And I think there are a couple things to note. One is the slide is less critical up here at 7th and 8th grade. You see that the difference between these two is not that great. But the lower in grade levels that you go, the more the slide has affected children's progress. So keep that in mind. Also, this is just one quote. Students are likely to enter school with more variability in their academic skills than under normal circumstances. And therefore, educators may need to consider ways to further differentiate instruction or provide opportunities for individualized learner. And that, my friend, is why you need to be on this call, because I'm talking about how we can differentiate our instruction. You see, guided reading is the bridge.
It's the bridge between whole class instruction, which many of you probably did when schools closed. You probably did some read alouds for your kids. You hopefully assigned them some books to read on their own. But guided reading is that differentiated model that's going to link the whole class and independent practice. So I'm going to be just taking you through guided reading remotely. And what does it look like? What's the big picture and what are the details of teaching a remote guided reading lesson? I'd like to share this slide. This chart is on page 16 of my yellow book. And I want to just emphasize that this is small group. Now, I had the privilege last week of being with my grandkids in New Mexico, and they started school last week, and they're doing remote learning. So I was like eavesdropping on everybody's learning, and they were all whole group instruction. And it took forever for kids to share. Everybody gets a chance to share on whole group lessons. So what we want are the small group guided reading lessons that will help kids. And then over here, excuse me. Over here is the practice for reading strategies. And this is where we're providing teacher support and differentiated instruction based on their needs. So that's where guided reading fits. Now, our goal, this is the big picture, is to help students build their reading power so they can have a network of strategic actions for processing texts. Oh my goodness. Okay. This is what it looked like maybe last year when you were in the classroom, and hopefully this is what it will look like again. This is what it may look like when you return to school. You may look like this. At least the kids can see you smiling, right? Or it may look like this. And I know right now you are doing remote learning. This is actually my granddaughter, Anna, in New Mexico. And of course, she's having a guided reading lesson from her Nana, because there's no way I'm going to let my grandchildren fall behind. So they had remote lessons all summer. And then you also have access to the digital reader. Now, I am not going to take you through how to use the digital reader. And the reason is there's already a wonderful webinar on that you can view. I'm focusing on what to do in the guided reading lesson, the how to, not how to use the digital reader. There are some things that won't change. You will, whether you're face-to-face or whether you're delivering remote instruction, you're going to need to know your readers. And my friends, that's so important in guided reading. And I don't think you know them right now. You don't know what happened since you last saw them in March. So you're going to get to know your readers again so that you can put them in these flexible groups, choose that just right text that's going to help their processing, and then, of course, differentiate your teaching so that you're not teaching them something they already know. That is not helpful. You want to teach them something they need to learn next. You also don't want to teach them something that's too difficult for them. That's not helpful. You need to be in that zone of proximal development that what you're teaching, they are learning. That's what guided reading is all about. And of course, we want you to integrate your reading, your writing, and your word study in every guided reading lesson. So the Assess, Decide, Guide framework is how I recommend you start by gathering your data with your students so that you can pinpoint a focus. This will help you form your groups, select your text, and then we're going to get into this part in the majority of this presentation of what to do when you're working with your students. So what does the student know? That's what we need to think about. But also, what does the student need to learn next? Wonderful quote by Fountas and Pinnell: if assessments do not impact instruction, they are of little value. So we want assessments that don't just measure children. We want students that are assessments that tell us what we need to teach next. Of course, using an assessment tool such as the Next Step Guided Reading Assessment, or you may have other assessment tools that are going to be helpful to you, but delivering a running record is critical. This is the way that you can determine and pinpoint a focus for instruction. It not only tells you what their text level is, but it also tells you what they need to learn next. So for tips for assessing your students remotely, if your students were a striving reader when we left school in the spring, you definitely want to begin at a lower text level than when they were at in March, for sure. Now, if your students were on grade level or above,
you might be able to start where they left off in March. That's what I would do. But for kids that were striving readers, more likely you're going to begin 1 or 2 text levels below, because you don't want to waste too much time doing all this assessment, and you certainly don't want to frustrate them. Then you want to schedule an individual remote conference with each student. So this is where you would call the parent, and you would email and get a time to do a quick running record. It won't take long. 20 minutes should be all you need to assess them, so you have an idea of where they are as a reader. When you're doing this conference with your students, load the text on your screen and then share it with your students so that the student is reading the text and you can take a running record. Now, honestly, you can use any book in your book room. It doesn't even have to be an assessment text in order to determine your student's strengths and needs. As the student reads aloud, that's where you take the running record. And then afterwards, just ask for it. What did you read? Just say, tell me what you read, and prompt them. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because some children are shy and they might not share what they already know. Finally, have a short conversation about the text. You know, what was the important part? Or what did you think about that character? A conversation so that you can assess the student's comprehension. That's step 1. I'm going to give you an opportunity to practice. This is one of the students that I've been working with. He's a delightful young man, Jackson. He's actually in middle school. He's going to be reading this text, and if you can take a running record on him as he reads these 2 paragraphs, and then we're going to talk about what would we need to teach him next.
Keep warm early climbers wore layers of wool and bulky boots. They slept in tents made of heavy cotton that they had to haul up the mountain. If it rained, their clothes became waterlogged, making the climb much tougher. Climbers today wore down-filled suit that they both climb and sleep in. Boots are waterproof and insulated from the cold, and tents are made of lightweight fabric that both easy to carry and resistant to frigid temperatures and high winds.
Okay. Can you find the one word that you need to break? That's the, what is it again?
Resent.
Okay, so you're missing this middle part right here.
Resist.
That's right. Resist.
And resistant.
All right, so you saw basically a running record, and then you also saw a teaching point that I was using in my guided reading lesson, because every time I teach a guided reading lesson, my friends, I take a running record. It's automatic. And this is just what his running record would have looked like. So he did do some self-corrections. There were some words that he did not correct. And then, of course, he really struggled on the resent. I did prompt him to, he said resent again. And then I did a teaching point with that word. But we can see his strengths. His strengths is, look at all he gets right. I mean, he gets insulated and waterproof and waterlogged. He's able to break apart a lot of big words. He's noticing with more detailed visual information when he's not right. And he's self-correcting. Yes, sometimes he doesn't self-correct. And that's especially when the word makes sense. But I know exactly where I need to go now with his work. I need to make sure that I select texts that offer opportunities for him to take words apart, because that's his next step. And I will use the taking words apart as my word study focus and also as my guided writing focus. All right, so we take our running record. Now we're going to decide, how can I group my students, and what text should I use for guided reading? What should I teach next? So I recommend you use the assessment summary charts that are in the yellow book. There's one for every stage, and I'm going to show you a little example of a couple of them. So on these assessment charts, at the very top, there are target skills that are appropriate for each stage. So this would be an emergent level. These are all emergent readers. And I do need to know if what letter or the sounds and letters that they know, and how many sight words they can write. And do they hear sounds and words at the beginning, middle, and end? Do they use the meaning, structure, and visual information? Are they matching one-to-one? Are they using picture clues? Do they use first letters? These are strategies that I would look for in a level A to C, but they're not ones that I would necessarily look for at higher text levels. So that's how this can help you. Then, based upon what your information, you summarize your information from your running record, and maybe from your letter sound checklist, and from your sight word assessment, to decide, who am I going to group together? Now, I want you to think about looking beyond the level. Now, this one, because it's not arranged in ABC order, it's a little difficult to determine who you would group together. So I'm going to show you another one. Here's another example. These are real classrooms, real kids. And what I've done is listed the summary of the assessment for students at D, E, F, and G, H. Do that with each assessment summary chart. Always list from lowest to highest, because that's going to make it easier for you to do some flexible grouping. So what would I do with this group of students that I have at this text level? How would I group them? Well, you're going to look beyond the level. Now, you can definitely group one adjacent text level. You can group those kids together. So I might put these 5 kids in one group, and these kids in one group, and these kids in one group, maybe for 2 weeks. And let me tell you, then you're going to have to regroup again, because children progress at different levels. And this is what differentiation means. We target what the student needs next. Based upon your daily running records, your daily note taking, you're going to make changes in about 2 weeks. And it may be that Omar only struggled with retelling, and that's why, and fluency, and that's why he was struggling. Maybe his accuracy level was fine. And after you've worked on his retelling and his fluency for a couple weeks, he's able to join a text level that's a little bit higher. The other thing this will help you do, though, is pinpoint your target skill. So for this group, I might really work on trying to get them to do both meaning and visual, to monitor with meaning, but also to monitor with visual. And 4 out of the 5 are doing a great job. They notice when something doesn't make sense, but they don't notice when something doesn't look like, except for Alex. So that could be my focus for the next 2 weeks. Where my next group, I might want to focus more on decoding, on solving words, because maybe that's what's holding them back from making progress. You always want to ask that question. What is it that's holding them back from moving forward? And with my last group, perhaps I want to work on the retelling skills, because maybe that's what's holding them back from being stronger readers. Finally, I also want to point out this last column. This is where you would write down information about how they spell. And there's word study inventories in many of my books that you can use, or you can use one that you already have. But give your students some words to write and see, do they record blends well? Okay, so these kids, look, all of them are good at blends. These are good at digraphs as well, but look at what's missing, short vowels. So I know that I need to target short vowels with these kids in my word study lessons, because that's what they need next. All right, now finally, let's get into the nuts and bolts of teaching a guided reading remotely. First of all, you want to prepare for your remote lessons. So you've assessed your kids, you've formed your groups. So now what are you going to do? You need to inform the parents that they are going to be receiving small group instruction. Now you're going to love this. You really are going to enjoy doing this, because it's so different than trying to deliver whole class instruction to 22 little kids and keeping them focused. But small group, how small? No more than 6 probably in a group. I've been doing 4 and 5 pretty successfully. Tell your parents that a student needs to have a quiet space at home. Headphones are actually quite valuable for many of these kids to keep them focused, and so that there are no distractions. You do not let them hold their pets when they're having a lesson. That's not helpful. Materials need to be organized. And I'm going to show you an example of how you might think about doing this, but they really need to make sure the materials are at the table wherever the student is going to be working. And hopefully it's not on their bed. Even if it's just a little card table or a snack table or some kind of flat surface that the students can work on, that's very important for them. You want to, of course, train your students to use the digital reader with literacy footprints. It's very user-friendly, but your first couple sessions are going to be just to show them how to upload a book, how to get on the line and upload a book so they can read the text. And do not allow any food during a guided reading lesson. There is no pasta during guided reading. All right, so here's an example of a school that they when they went to remote learning, they gathered these simple little tubs, and this was all stuff they already had at the building. But they went ahead and put them into individual learning tubs so that students can have their own set of magnetic letters and their own dry erase board and their own dry erase marker and some sound boxes and some analogy charts. And these would be your primary tools that your students would need for their remote learning. And also there's lots of online resources for your Fluent and Transitional readers. You can download these comprehension cards. You can print them out and put a rubber band around them or put them in a plastic bag and send them home. And what this school did is they lined up all the materials and they had the one for each student, and the children came by in the car, waved to the teacher, and got their resources that they were going to be using for guided reading. You can go on any of my books and even on my website, janrichardson.guidedreading.com. It's long, but it's easy to remember. janrichardson.guidedreading.com, and there's lots of online resources that are totally free. Now, I want to share with you something else. The hardest thing to get is the magnetic letters for your kids. So we've also created a Google slide that is an alphabet chart. In order to show you how to do this, I have to go out of slideshow, so I hope this is going to work. If I go down to my slide, let me find it. Okay. All right. Then when you're doing your making words activities, let's see if I can get rid of that. Okay. You can have the students, now you're going to make the word went, and they can drag the letter and put it on the line. So even if they don't have magnetic letters, they are still manipulating letters on it. And you can do this with make a big word. You can even do this with breaking words. So a lot of my word study activities do require that they have a magnetic letters, but if they don't, they can use this digital letter tray. And if you need one, I will be happy to send it to Kathleen or Jesse for you guys to download. All right, let's get into the teaching. So every guided reading lesson has reading, it has word study, and it has guided writing, because we know these are reciprocal processes that we need to make sure we teach with every lesson. So let me take you through what's taught in one guided reading lesson. These are the skills: sight words, monitoring, decoding, comprehension, fluency, vocabulary, phonics, phonemic awareness, writing. What did I miss? These are all the skills that kids need, and they're all embedded in a guided reading lesson that you would do day 1 and day 2. So you would follow the same lesson framework, 20 minutes on day 1, 20 minutes on day 2. So let's go through the day 1 lesson. You introduce the book, you confer with students as they read, then you give an opportunity for them to share and discuss, and because there's only 5 or 6 kids, everybody gets to talk, and then you're going to teach a short word study activity. Now, if you have access to the literacy footprint, so all of these exact teaching moves are already written out for you. They are a huge time saver for you. They're already written, but make sure you adjust based upon your kids' needs. Okay, so let's go through how would we do the introduction remotely. You always start with a brief synopsis, 1 sentence. It's on the lesson card for literacy footprints. And then you would let them preview the illustrations. They discuss some new words that may be unfamiliar to them. And then you would model the strategy, especially if they're at Transitional or Fluent, You're going to model the comprehension strategy. Now, how can you get this all done in 3 to 5 minutes? Be prepared. That's basically what I'm going to share with you. So you need to know which words would you introduce. You don't want to go into your lesson and say, now I wonder which words I should introduce on this page. Which words don't you know? Don't do that. You would identify, because you know your children, which words would you introduce. Here's a clue. You introduce the words they can't decode. Well, this is a level F. I'm sorry, but there's not any kid at level F, if you give them this word mosquitoes, they'd be able to decode it. If they can decode mosquitoes, they are not a level F. And there is a picture of a mosquito here. So you would have to decide, do my students have the skills on hand to be able to figure out mosquitoes? If they don't, then you would introduce it before they read. I'll show you another one, smelly. Kids at a level F, they probably should be able to get to smell, but they might not understand the inflectional ending of a Y. So you might want to introduce smelly, or you might decide to introduce another word because that's what they need. Let's look at this as a level L book. Go ahead and read the page and think to yourself, what word would I introduce at this text level? So unless you've just had a unit on the indigenous people of the United States, you're probably going to have to introduce the word Cheyenne. It's not a decodable text, right? But you also might have to introduce celebrates. Now, they would know what celebrates means, but they might not be able to decode it because it has so many syllables. It would be tricky for level L. Again, if they can figure out celebrates without an introduction, chances are they're not really a level L. So when you're introducing a book remotely, you want to share your screen. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So you would download the literacy footprints on your screen. You set your Google Meet or whatever you're using, and then you share their screen so that the students are all looking at the screen and the book when you introduce it. All right? You point out some new vocabulary. And let me show you how it works. This would be a level C, and this book actually comes from the Rise collection.
We're going to be reading the book, Mothers in the Wild. Do you know what mothers like to do with their babies? Let's read to find out. Before you read the book, I'm going to show you some of the words that might be new to you. On this page, you can see what the mother bears and the baby bear are doing. This word.
Now I'm grabbing the
word
annotate
this
box.
You're going to see that word on a lot of pages in the book. What's the word? This. So you don't want to say the. You want to make sure you go all the way to the end of the word. You notice there's an S at the end. What's the word with me? This. The other word that I want to point out to you is the word with. Again, make sure your eyes go all the way through the word. Say it with me. With. Nice job.
Okay, so then the reason why I chose this and with is they're sight words. They're not in the picture. The kids are at level C, so that at text level C, they might not be looking all the way to the end of the word, and that is my focus for this lesson. You don't need to introduce the word climbs because it's there in the picture, nor do you need to introduce mother or baby. So these are things that you would introduce before they read. And I also want to point out that even if you don't have the annotate tool, you could use your cursor to slide under the word that you want the children to notice. Then after you introduce the book, then they would read it. Now, I want to show, because I know I have teachers at primary and intermediate and maybe even some middle school teachers. I want to show what this might look like at a higher text level. So this would be at a fluent level, introducing the book.
Gator versus trapper and living with gators. And then our last section here is where we find the glossary and the index. Let me introduce just a few things before you start to read. So you can see here we have a great heading that you need to use and think about as you're reading. You also have a lot of text features. You want to always stop and look at those text features as you read. On this page, you see the word droughts. Droughts are a long period of time where there is no rain. And that could cause a problem for the gator habitat. Can you use drought in a sentence?
All right, so that's just a quick snippet of what it looks like. It's basically the same framework, right? It's just that the words you introduce would be different. So droughts, I introduced it because I don't know if they could decode it, and I'm not really sure if they would know what a drought is, and it's not defined in the text. All right, now here's the heart of the guided reading listen. This is the most important part. This is where you're differentiating, you're prompting. This is where you're accelerating your students. And this, my friends, is the hardest thing to do remotely, but I figured out how to make it work. So the students are going to each read the book independently while you confer with individuals. And remember, the time on this is the longest part of the lesson, between 8 and 12 minutes, depending on whether you're at a emergent or a fluent level. Most of the time when you're up there at the fluent level, your introduction is pretty short, and they would have more time to confer individually with students. So during this time, you will likely listen to them read maybe a paragraph. You're going to prompt them for strategic processing, and let me define that for you. It is problem solving. How do the students solve words they don't know? That's what you're looking for. You're going to take notes. May look just like a writing record, and then you're going to select individual teaching points, just like you saw me do with Jackson. That's what you would do individually with your students in this group. And then you would call the kids back all together and select a group teaching point. So let me show you important points. No round robin. Now, it's so much easier to do round robin reading where you display the screen and you have this kid read it and then the next kid reads the next page. It's boring. And not only is it boring for the kids, but they don't get to read as much. So if you've chosen the right book, okay, there will be some problems for them, but that's why you have the opportunity to teach them individually. So here's how it works. When you're working with a small group and you're ready to do this conferring, you have the students mute their volume. Now you can mute them as well, but when you mute them, all right, then their voice isn't going to be displayed. You're not going to be able to hear them. But unless they mute their own volume, they're still going to hear you. And that will be very distracting to them. So that you have to mute them on your platform. But the students have to turn down the volume or mute their volume on their computer, unless you're conferring with them. Now, when you're ready to confer with another student, of course, they can't hear you because they're on mute. So you can hold up a card that has their name on it, or you could, in the older kids, you can send them a chat message saying it's your turn. Jackson, turn on your volume, and then you confer with that student. So you're conferring with each student independently while they're reading the book on the digital platform. Okay? When you're ready for your discussion, you've had the chance to work with all of the students. You display an all card or you send a group chat, and all the kids turn up their volume. So here's what it looks like with first graders.
And then when you see your name, then you're going to put your volume up. Hey, Eleanor. What page are you on, Eleanor?
Oh, I'm on number 3.
Okay, go ahead and start reading on page 3.
Did you see Max? He has one red door, said the white car. The yellow parrot said, yes, he's not like us. He's.
Can you get it started?
Different.
Yes, very good. And you notice, Eleanor, I'm just going to show you something. That's a big word. But when you come to big word, if you just say the first part, diff, that will help you figure it out. And that's what you did. Good job. Keep going. Read the next page.
All right, so I just want to show you, I am looking at all of the children. So I can see the other girls are reading, right? I did ask, this was their very first guided reading lesson, so I did ask someone to be with them. There's a grandma, there's a mom, there's a caregiver. But the next lesson, they didn't have help. But they did need help the first lesson. And these are first graders who are reading at a level H. So again, all I had to say to her when she stopped at different is get it started. She got it started, thought about the story. And this tells me that Eleanor has some good processing already underway. Now, when you're listening for that strategic processing, I want to give you some guidelines on what your goal is. Your goal, and this comes from Dr. Clay, he must learn how to check on his own learning and how to orchestrate different ways of responding to complete a successful message getting process. So again, our goal is getting the message, right? But in order to reach that goal, the student has to check on his own learning. That's monitoring. And then they also have to orchestrate different ways of responding. So that could be rereading. That could be trying to sound out parts of the word, or covering the ending, or breaking a word apart. These are the ways of responding. What are you looking for? And this is true no matter if they're level A or level Z. What are you looking for during this time? Is the student noticing? Are they noticing what they don't get right? Do they stop? See, when Jackson stopped at resistant and he said recent, he reread it. When he reread, that told me he noticed. Or if a student sometimes might even say, what's that word? They're noticing. Or sometimes they just stop and stare at you. They're noticing. Those are good behaviors to watch for. They are signs that the student is monitoring. Now, there are other signs. Students who make multiple attempts are also taking action. So sometimes kids just stop because they know it's not right, but you really want them to try it and to see what would make sense and also look right. The rereading, the correcting, these are things you want to look for as a student is reading. Now, this next little clip is another first grader. And what I want you to just take a minute is she's going to read this page, and I want you to describe her strategic processing. And of course, if you were with a partner, you would talk to a partner right now, but you'll have to just talk to yourself.
Happy is jumping away. Oh no. Oh no. Happy is going to no. Fast, said Flea. Too fast, said Flea. Look. Oh, look out, shouted Top Dog. Happy is going into the cheese.
All right, so as you think about what she did, she first said Happy is going away. Instead of now, she said away. That's meaningful. She did not notice, right? She did not notice that she wasn't right. But when she tried to stay, Happy is going to hop, or Happy is going too fast, she noticed. She went hop and she said no. Then she said the puh. Why did she say the puh? Because she was looking to see if the puh in hop was in the word, and it wasn't. And that made her monitor, and then she was able to figure out fast. These are wonderful behaviors. That's what strategic processing looks like. It's not about getting the book 100% correct. In fact, if the book is too easy, there's very little processing that you'll be able to observe. So you do want that slightly challenging text. Now, as you're reading, these prompts are all over my books, but I just want to share with you that there is a hierarchy for prompting. If the student stops and does nothing, you should say, try it, because taking risks is the first step towards strategic processing, trying something. Now, let's say they try something and it's not right, and they're not monitoring. then your goal is to have them monitor. And you would say, are you right? Can you find the tricky part? Isn't that what I said to Jackson? Can you find the part that you need to work on? And he could. So that's a monitoring piece. Now, word solving, cover the ending, find a part you know, break the word, check the middle, make sure it looks right. That's another thing that you're going to be working on. Now, those three are kind of grouped together because those are really more of the decoding parts of the guided reading prompting. If they're accurate or they fix everything, then you're probably going to prompt down here. You're going to think, well, was it fluent? If it's not fluent, then prompt them for fluency. Tell them, don't point. Read it like the character would say it. Or read it all together without stopping. Or make sure you stop at the periods or stop at the commas. I've had to work with that on fluent readers, making sure they stop at the periods because that stopping is part of fluency. Fluency is not speed. Rate is only one aspect of fluency. It's about intonation, expression, stopping, pausing. Those things are important as well because they communicate the message. And then, of course, at those higher text levels, you might be asking them, what does that word mean? What does bulky mean? Or what is insulated? They got it right, but now you want to make sure they understand what the word means. Or you might choose to prompt them about, tell me what you read. Or tell me more about what a mountain climber needs. Or why do they have to be insulated? Going deeper into the thinking when they have it accurate. So these are just 6 things that you should think about as you are listening to children read. All right. So this next piece is a little video about Jackson again.
Finding. Infringing. Frigid.
Try it again.
Frigid.
All right, so look at this part first.
Right.
There you go.
Fighting.
You're close. You got to get this part in the middle.
Frightening.
Keep going.
And dangerous situations.
All right, so there you saw me working with him and prompting him. What was my goal? My goal was not that he gets frightening correctly or getting it correct. My goal is for him to notice the parts of the word that he's ignoring. So when he says frigid, he was thinking about in frigid temperatures. He's talking about mountain climbing, so frigid makes sense. And he's stuck right here on the FRIG, fridge. But he's not noticing that there's a part in here that he knows. He knows fright. And that's where I use the cursor to help him identify the parts that he was ignoring. So that's what you want to do at your text levels. All right, so I'm going to show you little examples of conferring with transitional and fluent readers. You might ask them to share what they have written first. Before you ask them to read a page, talk about what they've read. And of course, in my next step lesson plan, they're always jotting down notes. And this is the accountability piece. This is where you can say to the students, what were your questions that you were asking? And it lets you know if they truly did understand or if there was something that was confusing. Based upon what they share with you, you can clarify any confusions they have. You might have them read a paragraph to you, especially if you're concerned about them understanding, or maybe that next paragraph has a tricky word you want to see if they know. You can prompt them for decoding, for vocabulary, or for comprehension. It's all about differentiating based upon what they need. So here's a fluent guided reading group. These 3 boys. There's Jackson. He's part of this group as well. And I'll show you just a little snippet of what this might look like at a fluent level.
Luke, what do you have on your chart so far?
I got a couple things. I read up to page 10. I hope that was what I was supposed to do. And I wrote, the effects of an earthquake other than roads rumble and buildings fall there are over 160,000 deaths. It makes people homeless. They wash away communities.
Wow.
And the causes from a tsunami is this earth is not a solid shell. The tectonic plates rub, which causes a chain reaction to start a tsunami.
Wow, my goodness, Luke. Why don't you just read the last page to me then, page 10. That was awesome.
Okay. When an earthquake releases energy, the energy moves out from the hull in the form of seismic waves. I think that's something. Hold on. No, not yet.
It's going to go on one of the sides.
Yeah. The seismic waves. Seismic waves move in all directions and shake Earth as they move through it. When the waves reach Earth's surface, they shake the ground and anything on it. So that is an effect.
Very good.
I'm pretty sure.
Earthquake causes the seismic waves. Very good, Luke. Go ahead and write that down.
All right, so you can see the other boys are reading on their own. They're not listening into this conversation. I think you probably can see that they're also reading out loud. And this helps them stay focused. And they're jotting down notes as they're reading so that when it's their turn, then I will work with them on what they have read. Now, Luke never did get seismic. So, of course, that's something that I would bring to the whole group as a teaching point. All right, so the step 3 of the reading, this is the last part of reading the book, is about 3 to 5 minutes, and this is where you lead them in a discussion of what they read, of the book or the portion of text. Now you have options. You wouldn't do all of these. You might do a shared retelling because that's what they need, or you might ask them questions about what they read, or you might teach them a vocabulary strategy, or teach comprehension skills. You have many options, and chapter 7 of my yellow book is full of 29 modules for teaching comprehension. So you have tons of choices. You've got to teach what your children need next. All right, so I'm going to show you 2 different clips. One is a primary level of understanding, tracking the character's feelings.
All right, girls, so I have a question for you. Why did Max go to Pump? Who has an idea? Okay, Emma, what do you think?
Max was sad, and the yellow car was and like saying bad things.
Yes, that's right. So, why do you think he went to Pump, Violet? You want to add to that?
Maybe he wanted to talk about it.
He wanted to talk about it. Do you have anything else to add to that, Eleanor? I can't hear you, Eleanor. Can you put up your volume, honey?
Because he was sad.
He was sad, and so remember, Pump was his friend. So I think he was going to talk about it to his friend.
All right, so a couple things I want to point out that, yes, this little girl is having her guided reading lesson in the car. Not exactly what I was hoping for, but, at least she joined the group. And because she was in the car, another sibling was kind of yelling in the background. My friends, that's just what you're going to have. Okay, so we're going to have to relax our standards just a little bit sometimes to make sure that we have the opportunity to teach the kids. My preference is that they hold on to these headphones. But also with Eleanor, what happened was I had unmuted her, okay, which allowed her to hear me. But she didn't unmute, she didn't put up her volume. So I couldn't hear her. So that's just something you got to remember. All right. And then I just want to share with you one more example of what the discussion might look like at a Fluent level. See how we're doing.
Okay.
So, like the sequence, I think you said it was called, where the power 1, 2, 3, 4. First will be the first will be scientists have no idea. Second will be they're learning about it. Third will be they're starting to learn like a lot. Fourth, and then I'm learning the third one right now. And then the fourth one will be like I like Aiden's Corona mask. The fourth will be about like how they completely explored it.
Love it.
Absolutely impossible that they actually explored it.
So a sequential text might be next. Okay, everybody back online. Oh,
Sir.
you guys are a lot of fun. All right, I'm going to let Luke save his prediction. Luke actually did the predict for us. So, Jackson, you want to read your question first?
Why can the deep sea fish live in strong water pressure?
All right, so I want to point out a couple things. I didn't have to show you this clip, all right? And I showed it to you because this is real, my friends. Even when it's a small group, they're not all going to be paying attention. And of course, he's putting his headphones on like a coronavirus mask, which was not very helpful. But, you know, again, you have to go with the flow. And at least he's done the lesson, and I'm going to bring him back in again. And this is a small group. So you can imagine how they might be distracted with an entire group. But everybody now is going to share one of the reciprocal teaching strategies, and the boys then would take turns answering. All right, so the last part of day one is your word study. Now it's about 5 minutes. Now, if you're doing a transitional or fluent lesson, you might put it on day 2. That's your flexibility now. So look at your time. If your 20 minutes is up, and that's about it for their stamina, okay? You might be able to go 30 minutes with some higher level kids, but 20 minutes is about all the wiggles they can control. Now, again, you have options. You might teach a new sight word. You might do picture sorting, or making words, or sound boxes, analogy charts. There's lots of options for word study. And I don't have time to show you all of these, but I wanted to show you just a couple because there needs to be some adaptations for remote learning. So I just want to share with you a little clip from a kindergarten teacher.
All right. This is my first year with guided reading with a kindergarten class. And the most difficult part of it is definitely the word study. The word study is the most difficult part for me to differentiate what each group needs, and how to execute that, which one would be the most beneficial, whether I use the sound boxes or the analogy charts or the picture sorts. And sometimes I feel like I don't think that the kids need the picture sorts. And then when I do the picture sorts with them, I realize, okay, maybe we need to take a step back.
Now, Amanda is a wonderful teacher, a teacher who can reflect like this on what's the hardest part. And even for her to say, sometimes I don't always choose the right thing. Now, there's a scope and sequence, though, for the lesson, so that when the children are at these text levels, we have a skill focus for word study that will then make sure that children don't have any holes in their phonics instruction. When I started working with Jackson, I had to go back, and we had to work on some complex vowels. Even though he was reading up here at text level M and N, I had to go back and fill in some of the holes for the AY and the AI and the OU, because he didn't hold on to those skills. So you want to always make sure that you choose the skills they need on this, and not necessarily the ones that are on the card. How will you know? Well, there's a word study inventory in my book. You can also look at their writing and their reading. Notice what kind of words they're making errors on. That will give you a clue to what you need to teach about phonics. All right, and there's also, of course, the word study book that we talked about that you can go to. All right, I want to show you this because I know I probably have some kindergarten people here, and this is a pre-A lesson. Scarlett is just entering kindergarten. In fact, she's only had 1 day of kindergarten, and I did a lesson with her last week. And so I just want to show you what picture sorting would look like on the remote platform.
And you're going to need 2 Post-it notes. So
I think your daddy has 2 Post-it notes for you. Okay? All right, so on one Post-it note, I want you to write the T. You can make the capital or you can make the lowercase, whichever one you want. To get a marker and make a T. I know you know how to make a T. Let me see it. Hold it up to the camera so I can see it. Perfect. Okay, now take the other Post-it note and make an M. You can do the uppercase or the lowercase, whichever one you want. All right, now here's how we play the game. I'm going to give you a picture, and we're going to say the picture, and then we're going to say the beginning sound, and you're going to tell me if it starts with a T or if it starts with an M. So let me do the first one for you. This one is man. You say man. Man. Now let's say the beginning sound. What letter says Hold it up. What is that one? Good girl. Let's try this one. What's this one? Nim. Give me the sound. And what's the letter? Hold it up. And what's that letter? Good. Let's try this one. Table. And the sound is t. And what letter says t?
Okay, so by having the children, and you can do this in a small group now, they have their letters on their 2 Post-it notes. When you give them the word, they say the sound, and then they can hold up their Post-it note. That's a way for you can monitor if they're hearing the beginning sound. Now, we had to make some data adaptations for teaching a sight word, but it's so important that you include this, especially with your emergent and early readers. You still need to do what's missing. On a dry erase board, you hold it up to the camera and you do what's missing. They can do mix and fix, either with magnetic letters if you get to send them home, or on the digital letter tray. Then they can write on with their finger, and they can write and retrieve it. So here's a first grade group doing the sight word teaching, and this is their first time. So it takes longer than what I would normally expect.
Look at me. This is the word little. All right? It's got a lot of tall letters in it. I want you to take a good look while I run my card around it. See how it starts? Lit. Oh. And we're going to put the game what's missing. So take a good look. All right? What's missing, Violet? Good job. What's missing, Emma?
A 2T. TT.
Good job. Are you ready, Eleanor? It's your turn. What's missing?
A TTE.
A T, and then the next letter isn't a T, it's a little.
L.
Good job. And the E. Okay, we're going to do one more. I'm going to erase 5 letters. All right, what's missing? What's the next letter, Emma?
I.
What's the next letter, Eleanor?
T.
What's the next letter, Violet?
T.
What's the next letter, Emma?
L.
And what's the last letter, Eleanor?
E.
Good. And what's the word, girls?
Little.
Now I want you to take your letters and I want you to make the word little on your dry erase board.
This manipulation of letters is just so important that we incorporate this. So if you have limited number of magnetic letters, try to get them to your youngest readers.
And you finished. You know it to me. Good job. Excellent. Very nice. Great job.
I also have one question. Can I ask you for a minute?
You can ask me. Yes.
I had 2 L's and 2 T's and 2 of everything, and then I didn't have 2 of some things.
That's right. So if you don't have everything, look at what Eleanor did. She went ahead and wrote the L in there because she only could find one L. That's a great thing to do. So if you don't have the 2 letters, I love the way you asked that question, Grandma. You can just write it in. Okay, girls, now you know what to do next. You're going to mix it and fix it. When you finish fixing it, hold it up. Very nice. Almost done. You girls can put your trays down. Let me see, Violet. Good job. I think I see it. Can you turn it so I can see it? Did we lose her? There it is. Perfect. Okay, girls. Now what I want you to do is take your finger and write the word little under your magnetic letters. Write it with your finger. Try not to look without looking at the letters. That's great. If you have to look at the letters, that's okay. Okay? All right, now take your marker. I want you to cover up a little with your hand, with your other hand, and write the word little on your board. See if you can do it without looking back at the letters. All right, so what you see there is the last part is write and retrieve it. Have them cover it up, write it, so they can check it if they need to. And then, of course, I gave them a word help, which they know, and then I went back to little. So that's how you can do that on a remote form. I'm just going to show you a little clip. We're running a little short on time. I just want to show you just a little bit of this analogy chart, and then I want to show you word study at a higher text level. I'm going to write the word snow. You can send these analogy charts home. If you don't have it, you can just put it on a whiteboard. It's okay. Or they can just do it on a whiteboard. On one side and snow on the other side. Now, girls, I want you to underline the OW in each word because that's the pattern that we're learning today. Very good. All right, I'm going to show you what to do with the first one, and then you're going to be able to do the next one on your own. So if I want to write the word now, am I going to put it under cow, or am I going to put it under snow? Listen to the sounds. Cow now, snow now. Which one sounds the same? Emma?
The cow. Okay, they rhyme.
You're right, they rhyme. So write the word now under cow. Now. And underline that pattern. Your next word is show. So think about it. Is it show cow? Show snow. Where are you going to put show, Violet?
Where the snow is.
Good. Write the word show, girls. Show. Show. Listen to that sound at the beginning. Shh. Right. Got it right. And you really don't want to show until they've actually tried it on their own. Because you can see one little girl in the bottom
was waiting for me before she did her own writing. So you got to be careful about this, that you're not giving them too much support to where they're only copying and not really applying. All right. So I want to show you one more thing, making a big word. Love this is a wonderful activity for your Fluent readers. I have seen it do a world of good for these 6th and 7th grade students. All right, so let's see what it looks like.
You have these letters in front of you. Put your thumb up when you're ready. Jackson, you ready? Okay. All right, guys, I want you to make the word vibration. Clap it first. I want to hear you. Vibration. Good. Now make it. And when you're finished, pull your screen down so I can see your work. Gosh, that was great. Very fast. Nice. Let's get off the couch. Very good. Okay, break it, guys, into syllables. Very good. And I like, Jackson, how you actually said vibration. Excellent. Now I want you to put the word back again. What's the suffix in this word? Who knows? Thumbs up. What's the suffix?
By.
No, it's not the suffix. Suffix is at the end of the word.
Oh, shun.
Shun. So what's the root word in vibration? Anybody know what the root word is? It's a little tricky. A word that's related to vibration is?
Vibrate.
Vibrate. Very good. So let me show you how that works. So this is vibrate. All right? And if we make it vibration, we take off the E and add ION. All right, so clear your board, and now we're going to write some words.
So I often do make a big word and then write a big word if there's time. Okay, so tips for doing word study remotely. Make sure you provide the materials. Have them tilt their screens so you can see their work, whether they're writing or working with magnetic letters. And make sure you choose the skill they need and the activity that helps them transfer the skill to reading and writing. Okay, last component. On day 2 or 3, depending on whether you're in the emergent, early, transition, or fluent, you're going to do 2 things. They'll reread the book. Now, when they're transitional and fluent, or excuse me, when they're fluent, they won't be rereading the book with you. Sometimes the transitional readers will reread the book because you're working on fluency. But usually fluent readers already are fluent. You don't need to have them reread it. They'll just continue reading the book. And then you want to do some guided writing. You want them to reread the book with prompting, and I'm not going to show you any clip of that because it looks just like the first time they read the book. That you're going to show the cards, and each child's going to have an individual prompting time with you. Then for your guided writing, you're going to dictate a sentence or provide a prompt. Again, it depends on what text level they are at, whether you're going to do the dictated sentence or a prompt. You still have the opportunity to confer one-on-one. Remember, guided writing is not independent writing. It is writing with teacher support. And you still have the opportunity to select a teaching point. And it may be something like, check to make sure you put a period at the end of your sentences. Or, did you guys put lowercase letters in the middle of the word? Check your B's. They shouldn't be capital. Those are just different things you might do. And of course, always, at the end of your lesson, you're thinking to yourself, what am I going to teach in the next lesson? So I want to show you 3 clips this time. And this one is for interactive writing. So again, this is Scarlett, and we're doing a pre-A lesson, and this is our interactive, how you might do it remotely.
First thing you're going to do, you're going to draw 3 lines like this, with a space between them. Can you do that? There we go. Now, we're going to write the sentence, I am eating. Do you know how to make the I? Yes. Do you know how to make an I? Go ahead and put the I on the first line. Oh, I like how you're looking at that chart. Good girl.
She's checking her letter formation.
with the ABC chart.
You did it. Now let's look at our next word. I am. Now watch me. I'm going to help you spell this one. Am. A. Very good. Now, right next to the A, we have to make the next sound. Listen to this one. Am. What letter says And so you're going to put it right next to the A, so they're nice and close together. They're hugging each other. You get it? All right, our last word is eating. Let's try eat first. What do we hear at the beginning of eat? E. Go ahead and make the E.
Checking the letter
Very
again.
good. And I'm going to make the A, but that's just because it's silent. You don't hear the A. But what do you, oh, you want to put the A in there. Go ahead, put the A in there. Now, eat. What letter says T? T. Go ahead and make the T right next to that A. All right. And the last part, Scarlett, I am eating. I'm just going to show it to you. It's I-N-G.
All right, and so what happened there is she actually was writing her own sentence, right? And then she could cut it apart and remake her sentence, because it's very difficult to do interactive writing and still do your cut up sentence unless the child is copying the sentence as well. All right, so this is the early group. So these are my level H'ers, and how does guided writing look for them?
Write about our story. So you need your whiteboard and your marker. Okay? The first thing I'm going to do is help you plan your story. So what I've done is I've put some key words on our board to help us remember what happened in the story. So in the beginning, who was mean, Violet?
The yellow car.
He was mean to the little car. Then in the middle, there's the word ditch. Who wants to tell us about ditch? Yes, Emma.
I don't know what that. So like, is the ditch when the car got stuck?
Yes. So we could say the yellow car got stuck in the ditch. Good. How about helped? Eleanor, can you give us a sentence about what happened then?
He went to get a pickup truck and the police.
Very good. And who'd like to use the word friend at the end of the story? Emma, what happens?
They came friends and they say, I am very lucky and
Wow, and excellent. Okay, so here we go. Here's your first sentence you're going to write. You're going to write, the big car was mean to the little car. Say that with me. The big car was mean to the little car. Okay, so I want you to start writing, girls. You all know how to write the word the. Go ahead and write.
See how they're doing by themselves now? They know how to tilt their screen.
You want, Violet, you want the side that doesn't have the boxes. Are you on the, I think you are on the right side. You want the side without the boxes. Okay, you're good. Right, the big car, the big, say it slowly as you write.
big.
Good. Say each word as you write it. Stretch out the sounds for big. I think you can do that one. Big. Emma, want to check the first letter of B. Yeah. Very good.
I get mixed up sometimes.
That's okay. A lot of kids do.
Because they almost look the same.
Yes, that's right. They almost look the same. Eleanor, you want to show me what you've written so far? Very good. Good job. Okay. You guys know how to write the word car. Okay, so like starts like cat. Car. Very good. Was mean, and here's the word mean. You can copy mean from here. The big car was mean to the little car. All right, and then after they finished the first sentence, I gave them the next word, ditch. And I told them to make up a sentence with the word ditch in it. So we had reviewed it orally, and then they make their own sentence. So you only dictate the first sentence. The other sentences are independent. And the last video is of the Fluent group, and they are writing about the causes and effects of earthquakes. So I'm just going to have time to show you 1 minute.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, buddy, tell me what you got. So I'm doing individual
which one
prompting.
should I start with?
Whichever one you want.
I'll do the first one. Which one was that?
I think it was the causes. You writing about the causes?
Cause?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if this is right, but the tectonic plates spread apart and the pressure helps form an earthquake.
I think you're almost there. Instead of the tectonic plates spread apart, they actually rub together, which causes the pressure. And then, you're right, they do spread apart. So you have a little bit you want to add to that to make sure you talk about that they rub, the pressure builds, and then they break apart. Can you fix that? Okay. All right.
So what is it? The plates?
The plates
rub together.
Good. And cause the P word. Pressure. Add that, and the rest of it works. You could just add that part. And then, of course, I hold up the all card to let the kids share what they have written. All right, so tips for doing writing remotely. Provide a notebook. It's always better if they can keep their writing in one place. You can ask them to purchase a composition notebook or a spiral notebook. Have them tilt their screens when they're writing so you can see their work. Older students can take a picture of their writing and email it to you so you can talk to them about their writing at their next guided writing lesson. And don't forget to give them a little break. So when I was doing this little remote lesson with the first graders, I played just a little bit of the Jack Hartman and my video, and I just want you to notice little Emma in the corner here. So they do need a little break. All right. So what I want to close with before we get to some questions is that it is not impossible. You can do, trust me, I've done 151 of these lessons remotely, and you will see amazing growth. Jackson, I have to tell you this, when I started working with Jackson at the beginning of April 1st was his first lesson. He was reading at a text level M. Now, I've been able to do one-on-one lessons with Jackson every day, and he's had, I don't know, maybe 70 lessons this summer, and today he is at a V. He's gone from an M to a V over these summer months. So you will see amazing growth with your kids. Small group, and maybe some kids, you might have some reading recovery people that are watching. Yes, schedule this independent and individual lessons with these students that need it so that you can be successful with your guided reading lessons. All right, so I'm going to stop my screen share if I can figure out how to do that, and we'll take questions.
Okay, great.
How do I stop screen share?
Let's see.
There we go.
Got it?
Yep.
Hello, ladies. Do we have some questions for Jan?
Yes, Dr. Richardson. A lot of teachers are asking, what is the best way to ensure parents aren't helping with their kiddos?
Okay, so I actually had to say to one of the parents, don't help them. So that's one thing you can say. It's my job, I'll help them. But you do want your parents to help sometimes. So I think it's a gift if the parent is sitting next to them, maybe helping them with the computer, but you really want to be the person to help them with their reading and their writing. So you need to say that. The other thing is you do want these children to read the books again, and that's where I would want the parents to listen to the children read. Send home a little prompting card so that parents know what to say. Things like, are you right? Does that make sense? Can you get it started? Cover the word. Don't put sound it out on the prompting card. Because you are, and then also include some comprehension prompts. And what did you read? How does the character feel? So that parents know what to say when they're listening to their children read.
Okay, great. Our next question, we had a great one. With your experience, how can teachers best support our pre-A learners with letter formation?
Yes. Okay, so there's two things. One, I've actually done a Jack Hartman video on letter formation so that we're taking the kids from the top and having them go down. And I've had 3-year-olds get on this free YouTube video. Parents can play it at home, and it teaches them the correct letter formation with verbal pathways. Down, down, across, and it's all set to a fun calypso beat music. So that's one thing. The second thing is to send home an ABC book. You can, if you there's one that you can download off of my website for free. And again, Jan Richardson Guided Reading. Go to resources. There's an ABC book you can download. You can print it and send it to the parents, or maybe the parents can print it, and it has a nice, clear capital lowercase letter along with the picture. You do need to train the parents how to use the ABC book. We want the children to be touching the letter with their finger while they trace, because that finger touch is what's going to build that letter formation. It's so important that they start from the beginning forming their letters correctly. There's a page in my yellow book about the research behind this, that children who have correct letter formation actually write more, but they also write higher quality of writing. So letter formation is critically important.
Okay, great questions. Can you explain to the teachers again, when you're working with the small group, how you can get their attention to come back when it's time for their discussion with the teacher?
Yes, you can hold up just a whiteboard. There's 2 ways. And so what I've told the kids is, after you read every page, look up at the screen to see if your name is being displayed. And this would be for your younger kids. Now, when everybody's getting ready, I just hold up the all, and of course it may look backwards to you because I haven't done the reverse on the camera. But hold up a card that says all, or you can send a group chat. If they're older, I usually send a chat that says all, and they know to come back. And that what they do to come back, all they need to do is raise the volume on their computer. Wonderful. You can unmute them.
Okay. We had a huge response to your sharing the digital letter tray. Lots of interest in that. They were wondering, do you share access to that digital document prior to teaching them how to use it so they can play around with it? Or do you just model it first and then share?
Yeah, I wouldn't send it until you have shown them how to use it. Absolutely. So you would model it on your screen share, and I'll send that to Jesse, and he can put it on your website. And then you would just send the Google slide. It's one Google slide, and each letter has multiple letters with it because they might need 2 B's or 2 L's or 2 T's. So there's multiple letters on the digital tray. So the first thing you would want to do is show them how to use it. And when you use it, you have to go out of presentation mode. It's on a Google slide. You have to go into out of presentation mode to manipulate the letters. And then they can just press undo or Control Z, depending on what kind of computer they have. And the letters just pop right back to where they used to be. So show them and then have a lesson where you're, doing it with them. It's very easy for them to do. Even kindergarten kids can manipulate the digital letter tray.
These are some great questions. Another question that was in the chat box quite often was, how often would you suggest that the teachers meet with their groups during remote guided reading?
Yeah. So this really depends, again, on your class size and how much time your district is requiring you to be giving, synchronous lessons. But while the other kids are getting asynchronous instruction, this is when I would schedule my remote guided reading. And I don't exactly know, I'm sure it's different for different grade levels, but several of my grandchildren, they have synchronous lessons in the morning and they are asynchronous in the afternoon. And their classroom teacher, who I've worked with, and so they're doing guided reading, are scheduling their guided reading lessons in the afternoon. How many? Try to do a book a week. That would be 2 or 3 days of a lesson, depending on how many kids that you have. But again, if you can get them on a small group guided reading lesson twice a week for like a day 1 and a day 2, I think you're doing great. You're not going to be able to do every group every day and keep your sanity. You're going to have to stretch it out.
This was an interesting question. Due to the lack of time and the amount of time they'll be seeing the students weekly, how can they monitor that students are in the right book?
Good. So this is where you do need to listen to them read. All right. Now, so on your digital letter, on your digital reader, you can put books in their book box or on their bookshelf. When you're putting them on their bookshelf, you shouldn't put books they haven't read before, unless they're much lower. So you might go 2 levels below to put books on their bookshelf. These should be easy books they would enjoy reading. Once they've read a book with you in guided reading, then it should go to their bookshelf so they can practice it. And that's how you would monitor. You don't just give them access to all of the books on the bookshelf. You determine which ones they're going to be reading. Now, let's say a kid misses a lesson, and this happens a lot, where they don't get on their lesson they should have. Record your guided reading lesson that you did with the other children, and then email it to the student who was absent. So they would at least get part of the lesson as a recorded lesson. Follow that up, though, with a phone call, even just a plain phone call. Hey, buddy, go get Georgie the giraffe, the detective, and read the book to me. And they would then go onto their digital reader, read Georgie the giraffe to you, and you can schedule that. Just 10 minutes of them reading a little bit of the book so you know that that's the right text level for them. And of course, taking running records during the lesson when you're doing your individual conferencing.
Kathleen, do we have time for more questions or?
Yes. Mm-hmm. You have a few more minutes.
There was a question about how you would administer the word knowledge inventory digitally.
Yes, that's easy to do. I've done it a dozen times already. All you do is say to the student, take out a piece of paper, have them tilt their screen down, and then you say, number 1, write the word grab. So you just dictate the words and they just write them. That's all the word knowledge inventory is a spelling test. However, it's carefully structured so that you are actually assessing certain phonics skills, such as digraphs, blends, short vowels, endings, and vowel combinations.
These are some fantastic tips. I had a question. When you were showing the video and the little girl referenced her ABC chart, do you recommend sending resources to parents to print out for lessons prior to, each individual lesson?
Absolutely. That little girl lives in Dallas, Texas. Okay. And so I sent her name chart. And by the way, when you're doing the pre-A, you want to send home, here's Scarlett. You send home a template, just make it up. And then I put a green dot where she should start when she does her rainbow writing, because even though she can write her name, she wasn't writing it in the correct letter formation. That should go home for pre-A. The second thing that I sent home was the alphabet chart. And again, I just took the one off of my website. It's totally free. You can email it, and then her daddy just printed it for her, and it was such a great resource for her. Now for pre-A, that's really all you need to send home. We are actually mailing our pre-A's magnetic letters. I've not tried the digital tray with the pre-A's. With the emergent and early, they would need the digital tray, the soundbox template, and then when they're at the early stage, they're going to need the analogy charts. The early and transitional, the analogy charts. And then everybody really needs a digital letter tray, because everybody, you can see those big boys working on vibration and how important it is for them to make the words, with some kind of letters. You could also have them just write the letters. You could say, take out 6 Post-it notes or 7 Post-it notes and put these letters on the Post-it notes. You could do it that way too. And when you give them to them, you would dictate the letters in ABC order. So you would say, write an A, next one write the B. So they would write the letters in ABC order and then use their Post-it notes to make the word vibration. This way they can separate the letters into syllables or roots and suffixes.
I think that's all the questions that I have. But again, thank you, Dr. Richardson. It was a great session, very helpful for our district. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I agree. This was amazing. We had so many people just in the chat box singing your praises and loving the information and resources. So thank you so much.
Feel free to send any follow-up questions that teachers have. I'm just here on my farm doing webinars. So.
Well, thank you so much. And also, if you could send me that template for the magnetic letters, I told the viewers that when we get this video broken down into the hour and a half, I will put that resource for those magnetic letters underneath your video for them to be able to access, if that's okay. All right. Perfect. Well, thank you so much again. We really appreciate it. We had over 1,700 people viewing this afternoon, so it's great.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Good luck.
Thanks. Okay, if you are just now tuning in to us, thank you for being here. My name is Kathleen Receiver, and I'm one of the digital innovation leaders here with JCPS. And if you are still here from Dr. Richardson, please feel free to stay on because we have a treat up for you next as well. And I believe we have, I think Andrea's here and Amy, Sarah, and Stacy, and they're going to talk to us about ensuring equitable access with number sense routines K through 12. Good afternoon, ladies.
Good afternoon, Kathleen. We get to follow right with Dr. Richardson.
I know, right?
So I'm Andrea Higdon, your elementary math lead, and I'll let the rest of our team introduce themselves as well.
I'm Amy Crawford. I'm the AIS math lead.
I'm Stacy Justice. I'm the high school math instructional lead.
And I'm Sarah Downs, the middle school math instructional lead.
All right, Kathleen, I'm going to attempt to share my screen.
All right, you got this.
It's been a year since I've done it, so I think I can do it, but we'll see.
You can do it. You did it.
Try the closed captioning.
It's blinking, but okay. Yep, you have to go to present mode first, and then once you go to present, we can turn on your closed captions.
Thanks for coaching me.
You're fine. If you'll click on that X down at the bottom right corner to close out of your downloads, that helps too. Let's get that out of the way. That might just be me, but it always bothers me. There you go. And then click on allow to allow your microphone. Up in the top left corner. Yep. And then click on CC again and make sure that's orange, and then you'll be ready to go.
All right. So we're here today. Is it all working? Perfect. To ensure equitable access with number sense routines. And you'll see 3 graphics. In the center are the 3 pillars of JCPS because everything we do flows through these 3 pillars. On the left, you'll see the elementary math instructional framework. And on the right, you'll see the middle to high school instructional framework. So we're a K-12 team ensuring access for every child in Jefferson County. The 2 essential questions that we hope to answer today are how might I, as the teacher, provide equitable access to grade level standards for all kids? And then second, how do number sense protocols ensure equity of voice and choice with mathematical discussions? So I'm going to pause for just a second and let you think about where you are with these two questions. I'm still on a journey, don't have all of the answers, but working towards that. I think of us as adult learners, just like our children, we're on a continuum of continuous learning all the time, especially in this time with MTI. Beginning our work, I was given this text last year, and I absolutely fell in love with Zaretta Hammond's culturally responsive teaching. And the reason is, one of the anchors that I held on to was this chart on page 14. We're looking at the left where it talks about dependent learners, and then we look to the right where it talks about independent learners. And I want you to take just a moment and look at those two sides. And I wonder where you saw most of your students last year. So thinking about math instruction, whether it's in a kindergarten classroom or a sophomore classroom of mathematics, did the student depend on a teacher to carry most of the cognitive load? Were they unsure? Or did they regularly attempt without scaffold and have strategies to getting unstuck? And those are intentional skills that we have to teach kids. They're thinking skills that we teach them to move them across. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is shifting our dependent learners to become more independent learners. On the display now, you see Joe Bowler's 7 math norms. You'll find these at the top of the elementary curriculum frameworks. And the reason is, if we think about mathematics, math anxiety is a real thing. I taught 8th grade for years before moving to elementary, and students literally had to be pulled across the threshold of my classroom because math was so painful. And it doesn't need to be, because when we focus in on these norms, we realize mistakes are really valuable, and that's how we learn. I also think about the research Joe Bowler did and Carol Dweck did on brain plasticity. We know now that everyone can learn math to high levels. There is no such thing as a math gene, but students grow in that with productive struggle. The best way to grow new pathways is to let kids have opportunities to productively struggle and give them the scaffolds and the tools to help them move forward. This presentation, there's a couple places linked. The Power of Praise video, I absolutely love, and it talks about a strength-based model. And then on the right, you'll see U Cubed organization, and that's Joe Bowler's organization, where you can find posters of these norms, and you can also find many rich tasks that'll make great backpack artifacts. Now, our K-12 math vision. This quote fits really, really well. It says, will our students leave thinking math is all about speed and finding the right answers? Or will they have a different set of beliefs? Beliefs that embrace understanding, discovering, thinking, problem solving, and risk-taking. As a team, we're here to support you, making that shift to inquiry learning in math, where students are discovering and connecting rather than being a passive bystander watching the teacher perform mathematics. They're engaged in doing the mathematics. So I want to pause for a second. Our other two team members are in the chat. Elizabeth Reed's our K-12 coach, and Sam Bennett is our elementary coach. And I'm wondering, what have you heard so far that stood out to you? Now I'm going to move on, and I want you to notice the way this is set up. On the left, it talks about what teachers are doing, and on the right, it talks about student actions. Our curriculum frameworks and our instructional framework is set up just this way, to help us see what teacher moves look like and students' moves look like as we shift the cognitive load to students without overburdening them, but to giving them the confidence to flourish as a successful mathematician. Because we know effective teaching of mathematics uses evidence of student thinking to assess progress towards their understanding, and then we're continually being agile as teachers, adjusting our instruction in ways to support every child in their personalized path. When I look at the left, what teachers are doing, I really like where it says, identify what counts as evidence for the student progress towards the learning goals. What are we looking for? We have to know what we're looking for as we move in. And I love so much over the students where it says they're reflecting on their mistakes and misconceptions to improve their mathematical understanding. Not looking for perfection, we're looking for learning. And they're asking questions and moving forward and monitoring them for meaning. They're being metacognitive. Teaching math is really not all that different than teaching language arts. This slide is from Principles to Action, and it talks about the importance of multiple representations. As we think about these number sense routines and all across math, students need to see and touch manipulatives. They need to see and create pictures, connect it to written symbols. It needs to begin in context with a relevant situation. And we see the spoken language to think specifically about all of our kids across JCPS and the equitable access. We need to have routines in place where students are calling the same thing. We have common vocabulary that we use and embed within instruction, and then students are using that vocabulary. You'll notice on our re-envisioned curriculum frameworks, you'll see mathematical representations with ideas for how you might use manipulatives and how they fit. I want to make a point that students don't always have to be in the abstract where they're using an equation to solve the problem. It's quite all right, and depending on the success criteria, that students create a drawing or use manipulatives to solve that problem. What's important is the thinking they used and the justification as we think about Math Practice 3. And again, these are suggestions. Kids may have other ways to use manipulatives. My favorite is to establish in an elementary classroom where kids have multiple tools and you coach them how to use each one and they have their preferred tool. Now today, what you're here to talk about is 3 specific protocols. We know protocols promote equity because we count every kid counts. The 3 protocols we're going to talk about is a number talk, which one doesn't belong, and notice and wonder. And if you'll notice on the elementary framework, we've actually created links so you can dig into what they look like even more, but we're just gonna highlight 3 today, and we're gonna talk about them at different levels. We're gonna begin with an elementary number talk, then a middle school which one doesn't belong, and a high school notice and wonder. But you can use these routines K-12. The purpose of the number sense routines, as the teacher, if you look at the text in black, it gives students an entry point. That's our goal. It also scaffolds and activates their background knowledge, which we know the research says that's the most effective thing we can do to connect with kids. We're also explicitly naming strategies. When a student thinking comes out in the classroom and we name that strategy on an anchor, we give that strategy to the entire class to use. And as we incorporate visuals and we connect multiple representations, students make meaning of math, and that provides access. In blue, you'll see success outcomes, because what I want you to hear is these number sense routines can become a backpack artifact. Because students are going to construct clear and accurate claims. Students are going to analyze the appropriateness of their strategy. Students are going to reflect. Now I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Amy.
So one of the important things that you do with a number talk when you're in the classroom is to create a list of common hand signals that you can use so students can show what they're thinking without using their voice. So some of this number talk signals that we use are just hand on your chest, I'm thinking. You'll know that a student has an answer when they give you that thumbs up. This allows all students time to think about what they're doing, and it also challenges students. If they already come up with that thumbs up very quickly, then they can add an additional finger or two if they've chosen a different strategy. I always encourage my students to have more than one strategy to solve a problem. That's about, being flexible with our numbers. Also, you need to make sure that you're waiting for that thumbs up because we want to send the message that all students are expected to contribute to the conversation. That's how you build that community and make that learning accessible to all students. And then you can also use the agree signal because lots of students will have the same strategy. And instead of everyone shouting out, I understand, I got that too, they can use that quick, quiet signal and the teacher can look around and kind of see, and students can also get that feedback and that confirmation. And it allows teachers that opportunity to make sure they have appropriate wait time to make sure all students are engaged. So this is an elementary number talk. It's in the Making 10 strategy in the Sherry Parrish book. This is a number string with a progression of expressions that students solve that are all related. So Andrea talked about how important it is to name the strategies that you're using. So I put a sample anchor chart on what this might look like in a classroom. So students are going to start solving 9 plus 1. So many times they'll say, I just know it in my head. But there's so much more thinking going on in their head that they don't even realize or maybe know how to verbally express. So it's important that as they're thinking out loud, that the teacher's recording and asking those good questions. Oftentimes, if they say, I did that in my head, I'll say, well, can you tell me what that sounds like and count for me? And then that allows you to name that counting on or that counting all strategy or that making a 10. Also, especially in this virtual world, we don't have manipulatives in students' hands. We can use virtual manipulatives if we need to scaffold that learning. And so I added an image of a 10 frame, and there's a link on the slide deck to the Math Learning Center manipulatives, and they have a whole section of number frames where you can do 5 frames, 10 frames, double 10 frames. So if you need to provide that visual for students, you're able to do that. So in this number talk, we want them to start out with that 9 plus 1, and we want them to understand that 9 plus 1 makes a 10. Then it moves on to the next problem, 9 plus 1 plus 4. We want them to make those connections that there are lots of ways you could solve this problem, but an efficient strategy is that if I know 9 plus 1 is 10, then I can take that 10 and add that 4 and make 14. And then the next 2 problems compose that 1 plus 4 into the 9 plus 5 and make that 14. We want our students to be flexible and be able to remove that 1 from that 5 and put it with a 9 to make 10. And then add on their 4 more. And then the same thing with the 9 plus 8. It's just so incredibly important for that equal access to all of our kids to make sure that they are able to see these connections and visually express themselves. And Sarah, I think it's
the next.
Oh.
Yep. The next number routine is what doesn't belong. And this is a great routine to get students thinking about structure or what a picture is looking like. The idea is that you have 4 either expressions, equations, pictures, diagrams, and all of them have one piece that doesn't belong. So they're all true, but they're also, there's one thing that will make them stick out as to why they do not belong. So on your page, on the screen, you should see 4 different equations, and they're labeled both by colored boxes and the letters A, B, C, and D. So in the chat, I want you to pick one of those letters, A, B, C, or D, and then tell me why that equation would not belong. So I'm going to pause for about a minute or 2 for you to pick a letter, A, B, C, or D, and then describe why it does not belong in the chat.
So I see several people are saying that D does not belong, and because it is the only one not demonstrating the commutative property. Love the use of the vocab and reinforcing of the mathematical properties. C only has 3 digits in its equation. One of them results in a negative number because 5 minus 7 does not equal 7 minus 5, another reason for D. D, because both sides of the equation are not equal. Excellent. So that's just one example. Then we would want to push student thinking because they may immediately go to D like we did. Why would A or B not belong? So what is the reason that A and B would not belong compared to the other 3 equations? So there's lots of things that you can do and reinforce with the what doesn't belong. The purpose of this one was to set up the idea of what does equivalent mean and what makes a true statement. So when everyone said that D, because they are not equal, would be a great starting point and launch into our lesson for the day, where we will talk about what does it mean to be true and equivalent. And so that's a what doesn't belong routine. If you use the recommended programs that we recommend, many of these are already built into those programs so that you can easily implement them, and they can be easily adapted for other programs that schools are using as well. And we have resources linked at the end so that you can incorporate these more into your lessons. And now Stacy is going to talk about notice and wonder.
Sarah. I just want to make a point that so far you've seen 2 really great ways in which you can ensure all students have access to the math being put in front of them. Now, one thing I want to call your attention to is to the level of the degree of what is connecting from elementary to middle and then middle to high. So now as you're looking at this notice and wonder in front of you, I want to give you guys just a few seconds to kind of answer that for yourself. Feel free to use the chat. Let us know what you're noticing and wondering about each of these 3 sets of numbers. While you're doing that, down at the bottom, this specific notice and wonder calls an entry into an Algebra 2 activity. But we're building from the number patterns from Algebra 1 that they worked on maybe a couple of years ago, but it ties all the way back to the generator rules that they experienced in 5th grade. From 5th grade, it builds into growth factors when they're working with some of their scaling, and then building the functions and how do I represent this as it continues on in middle school. So even though we're using this to get started in an Algebra 2 lesson, we're actually reviewing several years worth of concepts in this one problem. So I'm going to give you guys a moment in the chat. What do you notice or wonder about these sets of numbers? Okay, we see that some people are noticing that it's multiplied by 3. Set A looks like it's multiplying by 3. So there's something taking place there. Something that when we did this with teachers and as well with students last year, they really start to talk about, if I'm a low-level student, I can at least see that the numbers are increasing or decreasing. And I can work with that when I'm in a high school setting. So that gives every kid buy-in. Even if I'm a student that is ESL or ECE, I can still see those patterns of going up or down. And I have a place in the classroom because that's acknowledgeable and that's also true. I see a lot of great things. There's multiplication. I see some division going on. Okay, great. So all of that is valid. So now what about some wonders? Any questions that this sparks for you guys about what do these mean? Some students may have questions or like, does this go on forever and ever and ever? Well, how do we know that in math? that attending to precision math practice 6 would come into play here. These specifically do not have ... Therefore, they're a finite sequence. They just stop. I'm only looking at this set of numbers. If I had the ... we would continue and go on. So this allows for some different conversation and really setting up and building vocabulary while connecting to student ideas. I want to also, we hit next, Andrea, thank you. One of the quick ways that you can gather information is by using a Jamboard. So if you click onto this, if you're in the slide deck, this just gives you a visual image of what students could put up and share. The notice and wonder can be done synchronously or asynchronously. And it kind of set the tone for your discussion when you guys come back together, say the next day in a full class setting. I want to point out that we used colors to really start to identify what are some of those key things that were similar or different, and the green ones were connections that were being made into what the lesson was going into. So you always want to use and drive some conversation with notice and wonders about where the lesson is going to go to. And so as we wrap up, and you've now seen 3 different math routines and number sense routines that support K-12 development of mathematics, I want to leave you with Andrea and some reflection points about how do I turn this into a quality backpack artifact.
Thanks, Stacy. So we've left you with a K-12 vision of 3 protocols. As I was looking at the notice and wonder, I was thinking about our first grade unit with data and graphing. And students are actually looking and noticing and wondering about the graph and how different that was than my experience as a student. And up next is going to be Justin, our friend Justin, I see him already here, talking about backpack artifacts. These number sense routines can easily be a backpack artifact if you include the reflection. Here are 7 questions that you can ask your kids. And I, as a coach, at first thought this was way too much for a 2nd grader, but I learned I was vastly underestimating our children, because by providing 7 different choices, this is a great anchor chart, by the way, then we're providing kids some choice in how they share their voice when they reflect and synthesize together. So, and if they do that, that becomes their part of their backpack reflection. So I'm going to ask you as participants, because as a teacher, too many times I failed to synthesize my lesson and bring it all together and give students time to reflect. If you could take one of those and answer, you have to change it slightly as the teacher. A new strategy it may be a new strategy, maybe those protocols or something else you discovered about it, or a math word you learned, a mistake that you've been making. I made a lot of mistakes teaching in my life, and I probably still am, but I continue to read and learn, because when I know better, I do better. How are you going to challenge yourself moving forward in NTI with these protocols? So if you'll answer one of these 7 in the chat, we would love for you to do that. And Stacy, Sarah, Amy, I can't see the chat, so if you could call those out, that'd be great. Or are there any questions in the chat at all?
As I'm watching, I'm not seeing anything in the chat just yet.
Okay. Wait time.
We can practice that anytime. I think we're good, Andrea.
Okay, I think we're good. I'll stop screen sharing.
Just want to let you know that the last slide of the slide deck is a list of resources that are available. So hopefully you can access the slide deck on the living calendar for this week. So please take a look at that. And if you need us, each of us are here to support you. Oh, we got things rolling in the chat now.
Thank you, Stacy, for reminding them of that. I completely forgot. I got kind of flustered when I didn't hear a lot. So these are our resources, and this was kind of like a trailer, like a book trailer. We are here to support you as a K-12 math team. Please call on us. We would love to work with your PLCs and work with your kids with you.
All right. Thank you both so much, or all of you actually so much. And if you want, you can jump over to the chat now and maybe answer some of those questions. They are coming through. So it's a little bit of a delay from us here and then on the chat. So by the time they get our questions. All right. Thank you.
Kathleen.
All right. We have about 30 more seconds until our final episode for this afternoon. And we are joined by Justin Elliott. And if I can get my schedule up here, we are joined by Justin Elliott and Alan Young. So welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for being here with us.
Hi, Kathleen. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Who's going to be sharing this afternoon?
I think I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
How's that look?
It looks fantastic. Just click on that hide button for us so we don't see the little hide. It's covering up your words down there at the bottom. And I think we're good.
Okay. Well, it's our pleasure to be wrapping up Monday. And for the last bit here, we're going to talk a bit about how we could use NTI 2.0 as a way to help kids appreciate their home life and appreciate the people they live with and help build the relationships at home that they have, and help them see their home as a fund of knowledge, as a place where they can bring to school and have it appreciated, so that they are more connected to what's happening in school and they feel like school's connected to what's happening at home. This will be a bit about exploring success skills in an authentic way, and helping kids see that they're using success skills already at home. Alan, what do you think?
Well, I think that too often, even when we have in-person schools, we think that the school part only happens at school, or the learning part only happens at school, and we kind of dismiss the fact that learning really happens 24/7. And now things are kind of flipped. So we're not only trying to lean into the fact that even if we go back to in-person, we should acknowledge parents and guardians as the first teachers of kids, and the home as the primary learning environment. But now it is actually the 24/7 learning environment because school is at home. So we've got to appreciate it.
Yeah, we did a bit of thinking about there are a number of things that aren't possible during NTI that we could do face-to-face. But what could we do during NTI that we couldn't do face-to-face? So this is a bit about helping kids really make connections between what's happening at home and the success skills that we're talking about in school. We're going to focus on 4 of the success skills: global competence, cultural competence, communication, resiliency and prepared learning, and collaboration. And we're going to talk about kids. We're going to see kids working on these 4 skills through some activities that teachers have designed for them. First, a word about communicating with families. At this point, this slide is probably the last thing we need to spend time on, since we've all spent the spring working on communicating with families online, and we've spent all these months now with each other. But whenever I'm talking with families online or otherwise, I try not to use technical education jargon, keep the language simple, keep the directions clear, and give as many options and support as possible. So, for example, if you're doing something that you might call inquiry-based learning, you may think, or you may call Passion Project or Genius Hour, you may think of a way to talk with parents about that in a way that doesn't sound quite so technical. Maybe something like asking questions together or doing some shared learning. So, out of the four, we'll start here with tutoring. In order to help students see their communication skills being used during NTI in a real authentic way, we might have them experience tutoring, a sibling, a co-classmate, someone else, maybe teaching a parent. And this might include buddy reading, math tutoring, or helping their parents with technology, helping siblings with technology. And we remember in classrooms, in schools, we would always have buddy classes and peer-to-peer tutoring. We knew how important it was. We shouldn't forget it now that we are in NTI. Once students are done with such an experience, we might help them reflect and share about what they learned with the questions you see there on the screen.
Yeah, I think that in some respects that there's obviously we did some of this in the spring, but now as we're going into having likely for most students, new teachers, new classmates, different class arrangements and so forth, that this becomes an opportunity to get out the I'll help you with this muscle with regard to what kinds of things they can do. And same with parents. On the one hand, I think Justin, you said something about, we've been communicating with parents, but our teachers have not been communicating often probably with the new parents that they're going to have. So this is an opportunity to realize that they can play an important part in their child's learning. Has always been true, but it's ever more present now, and how siblings can certainly help be that same support for others. And then as we've now become better at connecting with our fellow classmates electronically and technologically, likely from last year and over the summer, being ready to be able to be helpful as we go into the school year to others in your class is certainly a great opportunity to show success skills.
Yes, the biggest challenge I imagine for elementary school teachers and maybe through middle and high will be helping kids connect with one another and helping and trying to build the kind of community you would have that could encourage real intellectual risk-taking, real asking of questions, real collaboration. It'll be difficult. We've not met our kids this year. So something like this might go a long way to help kids get comfortable with each other, as well as helping their siblings. Mm-hmm. Practically speaking, Google Classroom might be a way to facilitate this sort of work. For example, here the teacher is just having a conversation in terms of a question in the classwork stream about giving tips to each other about teaching younger brothers and sisters. Here the teachers provided resources, read-alouds online, math games online. So the teacher is treating the students here like colleagues and providing resources and reminding them of academic content too. Remember to ask, does it look right, sound right, and make sense? Ask yourself and your partner some questions. Our most popular ones were, what will happen next and why the characters say or do that.
So you're trying to help the kids connect the way teachers talk to them and the way we're modeling thinking for the kids in classrooms, so the kids can do that sort of work with each other. In other words, to make the tutoring actually effective. It's not just something to keep them busy. They will actually help each other reflect on the 3 reading queuing system, for example, if we scaffold them that way.
And I was going to say also, just, one of the best ways to learn something is to teach it, right? So that's where this also provides opportunities to deepen kids learning when they're the ones that are helping others in terms of particular areas where they have some expertise.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. All right. So communication. How about prepared and resilient learner? Well, we may have kids do inquiry-based research. So sometimes we call this a genius hour or passion project in a classroom, where kids would be able to research a topic that they find interesting and have an authentic audience waiting to be presented to about what the students learn. During NTI, we would bring the family into that inquiry too. So we may give kids and their families chance to generate many different questions, to research and come up with some answers or solutions together, and then present to the rest of the class on what they found. Again, another opportunity to get kids connecting to each other and communicating with each other during this time. We may ask questions to help them reflect, something like what you see there, bringing up the idea of resiliency and preparedness, and the idea of honoring the academic learning that the kids would do in the process, simply asking, what new things did I learn? Again, we can look at Google Classroom for an example of a teacher making this happen. In this case, the teacher has a assignment, shared learning. They start with a Jamboard to allow kids asynchronously to post questions. You can see a number of different questions here. The teacher has grouped the questions in terms of, this looks like biology or sciences, here's technology or machinery, literature. The teacher can then have kids choose the questions to answer. The teacher's provided some reading, articles, and then the teacher's provided a model of ways that information might be presented. For example, the teacher's mocked up a Google site here with some very clear structure for kids to follow, and some information that would have been found online. So the main idea, and then 3 supporting ideas and some details underneath. Here's even a simpler example in the form of a Google slide. While students are learning about the answers to their questions, the teacher shows examples of different ways to present that information, and then gives the students the space to sign up to present what they've learned to their peers. Because we know that attendance on Zoom or attendance synchronous events might present all kinds of problems. Here, kids in this way can sign up to go see their friends do their presentations if they know in advance who's presenting and when. So just a bit of coordination. It's a bit of starting with asking our kids, what are they wondering about during this time, and supporting them through their research with models. And then finally, an audience that is their peers.
The thing that I like about this part, Justin, too, and I think is so important is, not already having a particular topic in mind, but rather allowing for the kinds of co-construction by kids and the input by them with regard to their interests and passions, so that whether it's their own interest or passion or something that they're familiar with at home, that they'll more likely be able to find some support and help with from parents or grandma or grandpa or a neighbor, something with regard to that those folks may have some knowledge about that they can add to the learning experience and knowledge and understanding of the student, versus when we just assign a topic, then it's hit or miss whether or not the parent can be that helpful. But by having at least some ability for the student to kind of determine those things, I think we've increased our chance of having that support network at home be more a part of the learning equation.
Yeah. A buddy of mine who teaches was concerned. He said, I get work turned in by my kids, but I don't know if my kids actually did the work.
Right.
I'm not so sure to what extent the parents did it, the kids did it. When you invite and make the space for the parents to help, when you make it about their collaboration with their kids, with the grandparents and the uncles and the aunts and the family, the older siblings to help, then you may kind of work around that tricky problem. Also, I think during this NTI time, engagement and authentic engagement would be my number one concern as a teacher. It would be hard for me to gauge how really meaningfully interested are the kids in the work they're doing. So to give them the space to ask the questions, get you off on the right foot as far as getting kids interested and really doing the work and thinking about what they're doing. For collaboration, we may have kids do and reflect on some simple routine helping around. It's hard to know how to stress and what kind of schedules our families keep. And so as a parent, I know I would like to have the flexibility to be able to say to my kids, hey, can you help me out with this thing? And for the kids to be able to say, yes, and we can take a picture of it and we can reflect on it and journal about it. And that's part of our schoolwork. I would appreciate that as a parent. And that really is a collaborative exercise at home. So any daily routine work. And the real meat here, of course, is the reflection on it. If kids do this kind of work every day and don't think about the aspects of collaboration that are involved, then we will miss an opportunity to help them really get an authentic understanding of what collaboration is. But if we can help them through these kinds of questions and just making the space so that it's, quote, official work, then we can help kids develop a more realistic and authentic sense of what is collaboration.
As well as I think some of these, it's if you can do some of the ones that are around the kind of life skills that kids will need and when they're independent and on their own, then certainly collaborating and understanding how families and people work together to make a home, to make things work is really, I think, an important part of what we're teaching as well. And additionally, it may be, therefore, some of the ways that you can get to other learning is if some of these collaborations and around routine things are actually done together, so people can become better at how they use their time and make sure that their environment is such that it's more conducive to learning and so forth as well, if these things are done in advance. But we might as well go ahead and call these things that we can collaborate and learn together on as well.
That's right. Yeah, it didn't occur to me. I normally think in elementary school terms from my classroom experience, but that's right. When you get to high school, have the space to really talk to your parents talk to your guardians, talk to your grandma and grandpa about things like budgeting and driving and living on your own, and to have that be folded into your academic work makes both sides of that coin richer.
And it also means that we don't think about how much our parents and guardians, they have all different kinds of, quote, formal education levels, but all of them are experts at certain things that they've had to do in terms of their life experience. And so this really, I think, calls upon everyone to be valued in terms of what they have to give. And I just think it's a great opportunity for us to connect and not miss the fact that so many of our families, our guardians, our brothers, our sisters, or neighbors have things to give us.
That's right. Yeah, it's part of moving from the looking for all the deficits to look to the strengths, look to the assets and play to those strengths.
That's those funds of knowledge.
That's right. Practically, a teacher could facilitate that sort of work by once again starting with a question, asking and giving some different examples of how of what kinds of things kids might do at home, but also the parts of collaboration that might be involved: patience, listening, effort. And then here the teacher has posted a Google slideshow, which they have given share access to their students, and it's allowed the kids to go and post pictures and captions of the types of things they've done. My golly, look at that table setting. That must be stock photography.
Hey, I am telling you, I haven't remembered every part of this, but I can remember when I was like 8 years old, maybe 9, my grandmother showing me elaborately about how to do all the different kinds of things to set up a table. I just don't think that's done much anymore, but I actually do remember like which side I put my knife and my fork on and all that kind of stuff. But it all came from that kind of practical at-home knowledge.
Uh-huh. That's right. Of course, the most important thing there isn't that you remembered which side to put the knife and the fork on, but it's that you felt valued, you knew you're a part of a team, and you knew that your work mattered. And in this case, not only will kids learn those things, they'll learn that that's part of collaboration, but now they're using a little technology too to put the pieces together. And you can see if you wanted to talk about text features, you would have that whole conversation here too. Pictures, captions, there's all sort of good conversations to have about graphic design, principles of art and design, and informational text and layout. So the academic side can go just as deeply as you want it to there. Finally, and here we'll really talk about families as funds of knowledge. And this is a bit about cultural competency, and that is with a student being competent within their own culture and have an appreciation for where they're from. This would be an apprenticeship sort of assignment. There are many skills that parents could teach, and these might not be skills, but also family traditions or knowledge or the history of a family or stories. It might even include professional work from home. If a parent's working at home and a student has an assignment to go shadow your parent as they do their work from home, there could be all kinds of interesting learning happening there. This, I think, also ties, Alan, to your previous idea about older kids and older students learning more realistic life skills.
Yeah, I think, on the one hand, when we talked about some of the things before about the routine things that just have to be done in a family, that's true. But there are things that people not only do to get things done, but that they end up loving or enjoying or having some kind of special talent or flair in, whether it's cooking or baking or gardening, or like my grandmother has also played piano. And I remember her giving me piano lessons, and I can't remember anything about those things now. But what I do remember, quite honestly, was her love and passion for it. And I remember the experience of the relationship. So it's quite memorable to me. So these are really important, I think, to realize how much there is to learn from those around us in terms of what they've developed as their passions, as their skills. And sometimes it may just be that you have that great memory. Other times you may pick up some tips that are going to be helpful for you. And sometimes you might end up sparking a passion or a talent that you have, so that if you cook a lot around the home, maybe you want to be a chef, or you want to go into gardening, or those kinds of things. So they can certainly have even professional implications, but that's not necessarily why to do it, but it is just to recognize the expertise that can be found in the people that you are really close with, but you don't think about them as being part of school or that part of learning.
That's right. Back to the idea of helping kids build relationships with those at home and helping them see these skills happen at home in an authentic way, right? In this case, in order to support the kids through this kind of learning, the teacher posts materials, and this is a shared drawing now, so kids are editing one single drawing. So again, some technology practice and shared docs. And what else is there? Oh, and then making a connection to real careers. So giving the kids a website they can go look at and see what real apprenticeship looks like in the professional world, help them draw that kind of connection. Okay. So if we give kids the chance to do these four types of experiences, and then we have them share with one another what they're learning and how they're using these success skills at home in their schoolwork, then we can't neglect the student themselves and the way that they are going to take all these experiences and see them from their own point of view. So to help them do this and reflect on their experiences, we have journaling. Three main types of journaling are possible here. One of them is public journaling, and this is just as simple as the Google stream. So don't forget, in Classroom, you have your classwork page where you put up assignments, but you got the stream. And in the stream, this is your asynchronous, ongoing conversation about whatever's happening in your class. And so to bring these topics back up in the stream would keep them at the top of mind for your students, the fact that we're using these success skills all the time. There's private journaling, so just providing that as an assignment and giving your kids the kind of incentive or the space to write. And the dialogue journaling, which is like letters. It can be like a pen pal sort of thing. We've seen pen pals between teachers and students. During NTI, kids love getting something in the mail. And you might just save the U.S. Postal Service at the same time. Who knows? But Alan, before we did this, Alan, talk about the kid-to-kid possibility there.
Well, I just think that this is a chance for folks to not only internally reflect, but for them to reflect together with each other, and how that can also be things that are shared. The other thing is, I just wanted to say is that, some kids, and depending on where the students are in terms of their own age level and their own competencies, they might be more drawers, or someone in terms of what how they want to express themselves and share their experience of their own learning that they're going through, and how they are trying to communicate that with others. So, you might have folks who do more of a graphic novel of sorts, or some other kind of drawing to do it as well. But.
So, the takeaway here would be this, that while we are grappling with all the difficulties and all the things that are more difficult to do in NTI, let's look to our families and to our kids and the cultures and the places they come from. Let's look at them as assets, and let's look for opportunities to help kids build the relationships at home with those that they relate to most closely, and help them build the relationships with one another, and ultimately help them build a relationship with their teacher that can sustain them through this NTI and then get us into face-to-face, honest-to-goodness, real-life teaching and learning.
Yeah, this can actually be an opportunity for us to kind of, if we are very mindful of and intentional about it, to try to focus on parents and guardians as the first teachers, and home as a place of learning, so that when we do go back to face-to-face and in-person school, we can really do something that builds upon the foundation of relationships that really this is all geared around.
Yeah.
Well,
yes, sir.
Thank you both so much for your great insight and information. You have a lot of love in the chat. We appreciate you both.
No problem, Kathleen. Talk to you soon.
Hope you have a great afternoon. And to all of our viewers out there, we will be back tomorrow morning at bright and early. I believe at 8:30 tomorrow morning. So we'll see you tomorrow morning at 8:30 for with our NTS. I do believe our NTSS behavior and coaches for facilitating virtual circles. So until then, we'll see you tomorrow morning.